Steven and Larry, and we're talking Swish.
Welcome to a very live edition of Talking Swish. Larry here. Alongside with me is my man Dewey and my man Steven. Guys, how are we doing?
Good, man. We had a really fun weekend. We did our first ever live stream, Swish Live on location this weekend at the second Galactic 2K, Modern 2K. And it was a blast. The stream went really well. I had a feature in round 6. Anyone who's interested in watching it, I was playing Elementals. I had a really close match with Tron. I would definitely advise going back and maybe taking a look at it. I think it was actually one of my more interesting matches on the day. I ended up losing, so spoilers there. But so I did not top 8 this event, but was really close. And honestly, losing to Dress Down Shadow and losing to Tron, not the worst possible result, because those are pretty tough matchups for Elementals, and I was very, very close to beating that Tron player. As if you go back and watch that match, you'll kind of see. But it really just speaks to the power of that deck. I mean, Tron is supposed to be one of my worst matchups, and I got Karned and Ulamogged in game 1, and still had a really good chance to win that game if I just draw a fetch land in like 5 cards. So, but anyway, our stream went really well. Thanks to everybody for tuning in and watching it, and yeah, we look forward to doing more in the future. But really big weekend for Team Swish.
Yes, I agree. It was a good weekend. We were able to do some nice little production points over for Galactic Toys and Games. We're glad they let us come in and do it. It was a great experience, and we look forward to doing it more. We'll be doing their Monday Night Modern every week. We did last night. We went and covered it. Me and you did some commentary for that.
We did. And I don't want to forget to mention, we did have a teammate, top 8, Noah Heisenberg.
Yes, Mr.
We're saying that
Heisenberg. Mr. Heisenberg. He was able to get there. Yeah, it was a good time. Noah did well. He played Tron. As people that do know Noah, he's done quite well with it. It's a shame he left it for a little period of time, but he went back and he did well. He was even on coverage last night. Playing some Hammer with Monkeys. It was a good time. But Dewey, we talked about us. What did you do over the wonderful weekend?
Oh, I had a great time. I had a wedding on Friday.
You got married?
I did not. I attended a wedding. My girlfriend was officiating it.
Oh, that's fun.
And then after that, Thursday a little bit more low-key. And then Sunday I went to the Hollywood Fest, which I loved.
Okay. Where was the wedding at?
It was in Waterford, so a little bit north of me.
Okay, a little bit north of you. That ain't too bad. That's a good time. No, weddings are always fun. I'm not a fan of them myself, but I know there's a lot of people that just enjoy the wedding ceremonies. But you talked about the festival, the Renaissance Festival Sunday.
I got to bring my dog, which was really cool, and obviously you guys were there too. Lucked out and didn't luck out. It was weird. So our other friends went, and they bought just the Feast of Fantasy, which I'm a big fan of. If you're gonna go to the Holly Run Fest, buy the Feast of Fantasy ticket. They have 2 feasts every on Saturdays and Sundays when they do the festival, and it's so worth it. It's like $100 or something like that. It used to be like 80 or 90, which is even better. But it used to come with your ticket. So you'd get a free ticket, and then you get the festival. It's like unlimited drinks, and then a 6-course meal, which is cool. But you had to buy the ticket now. And I found out there's different ways you can get free tickets, so I'll probably start doing that going forward. But they didn't buy the ticket, and they just got in with it. I'm like, man, I got gypped on like $50. But then I saved $10 because they didn't charge me for Winston. So, it's mixed emotions. But
Winston
it was great
is your dog, we're assuming?
Yeah. Winston's the dog. He's got his own Instagram, so he likes to hang out and have fun.
Very nice.
Yeah, that was awesome. I know it was a fun time. You didn't warn us about the mud, and the experience
Right, because I can
that involved
foresee
that.
the future.
Yeah, you can.
Julia knew about it. She sent us some messages.
Like, didn't you have your boots on? I had my boots ready to go.
Me and Steven had dress
No.
shoes.
Yeah, fortunately, my shoes were already like gorilla glued
Mm.
together because they were like work shoes that had basically, been on their last leg. And Julia gorilla glued them because they had like split at the front.
Oof.
The front end, like bottom portion of the dress shoe, is like tearing off. So we gorilla glued that back on. But now that they're a muddy mess, those shoes might just be getting decommissioned. We might have to get a new pair of dress shoes in the future. Dewey, I also heard that when you guys left, you took everybody on a little detour.
Tell us about this, Dewey.
So I was not aware there's two parking lots. So anytime I've ever
Yep.
driven there, I've always entered in through the side where you turn right into the main lot.
Yep, the normal one. Yep.
Yeah, I've always entered. This time, though, was
Yeah.
my very first time going the other direction because I'm in a different part of the state now. And I was like, I left through the main entrance like I always do. And I'm like walking, and then we split our ways. We said goodbye, and I'm like, "Hon, where's our car?" She's like, "It should be here." I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't think this is it. I don't think this is it at all." She was not happy with me, man. We walked for so long, and I'm certain Adam's gonna be joining us. Larry and Amanda are not with me either.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I was very very grateful that Julia is an employee at and there, so her car was like right behind their camp at CC there, so we were able to just pretty much get right to our car. I was very happy to not have to walk in any more mud. My legs are still very sore from this weekend and back and everything else. I'm a beat up old man after walking around in the mud for 10 hours all day.
Oh yeah.
What are you, like 25?
27. 27.
Bro, back when I was 27, I was a young chipper snapper. Long time ago. Calling yourself
And
old.
enlighten us. How many years ago was that exactly?
4.
Oh,
Ages ago. Ages.
No, it was super fun. It was my first time going to the Ren Fair. I had a good time. Daughter had a good time. Definitely would go back again.
Yeah. We didn't get to check out. Well, we didn't join you guys. So I don't know how much of it you guys got to see, but like the Washing Wenches show, we were kind of there, but we were on like the outer skirts of it, so we couldn't hear them as well. They're always a great time.
Julie and I watched it, and it was really good.
Steven, did you volunteer?
I did not.
Why not?
Julie wanted me to, and I said no.
Dewey tried to volunteer at some of the shows.
Yeah, I tried to volunteer for the fire show. The other person that I really enjoy was a Dead Guy Bob, Dead Guy Al,
Okay,
or something
I
like
didn't
that.
see him.
He passed away. He passed away this last year. He did this wonderful puppet thing there, and it was always very, very funny because he just made fun of everyone. So
That's funny.
Yeah,
oh my God.
the shows that we did go see. We watched a guy almost catch himself on fire. That made me happy. They were cool. We went through a maze, but unfortunately it was muddy.
Yeah.
I will say that walking trail that we went on, if it wasn't so muddy, I bet that's a real nice trail.
Yeah, no,
I
for
wasn't
sure.
really thinking about that at all when we were walking through it, to be honest with you. Didn't cross my mind one time.
So funny enough, walking back on the trail, I stepped in the wrong area, and my foot got stuck so bad that my shoe just stayed.
Oh,
You walked around, then went to the trail and walked back?
I didn't know how to get back, so we just went backtracked and
Oh.
went to the trail.
So we kept walking forward. There's another path that cuts over and lets you get to it.
Yeah, because this is the first time I went, so I didn't know how to get there, so I just went the way I knew. I was like, I know there's 100% success rate if I go back the way I came. So
dude.
That's all right. I
This
know.
is the first year I didn't get a turkey leg, though, or a Scotch egg, and I'm kind of sad about that.
I've never had a Scotch egg, but I have definitely had me a fine little turkey leg when we got there.
Mm-hmm.
It was nice.
Going forward, I also found out, because I was at Costco yesterday, you know me, Costco fanboy. They sell 2 tickets and 2 turkey legs for $40. So you do feel like paying for it. I feel like that might be a good bet, but found out if you donate blood, you get it for free. So why not?
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good deal right there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, today though, we enjoyed the weekend. Let's talk a little bit about what we're doing here today. We're live on Twitch. We don't do this often.
We should do this more.
Yeah, we definitely should do the live Twitch thing more often. I think it'll be a good time. Maybe it'll become a regular for us. Only time will tell. But today we're going to be doing our special little interview segment. It's all going to be one show. And today we got a returning guest on the show, Adam Love.
We sure do.
Yep, today we're going to talk. We'll chit-chat for a little bit, and then we'll jump into the meat of the topic. The big topic today is, I won't call it like a presidential-style debate, because it's nowhere going to be close to that. Won't be as boring.
It'll probably be more professional than the first one, for sure. Probably not even close. Actually.
That bar is kind of low, to be fair.
It's super low. Yeah, super low. And we're gonna jump over it. We're gonna get over that bar. I'm confident in that.
Oh, it takes baby steps to get over that bar.
Well, yeah, I don't even know that it takes steps at all. I think the bar was just underground, honestly.
It was an imaginary bar.
Yeah. But yeah, regardless, why don't we? So Larry, kind of tell what are we kind of getting into today, and how did it all kind of start?
Not to go like all full try it on it. Me and Em had some disagreements. Some that you agreed with on me from my view, and some you didn't. Obviously, that's how it goes. Pretty much it came down to some of the matchups for Death and Taxes. We're going to talk about some of those matchups, and we're going to give viewpoints on both from Adam's side, your side, my side. We're going to talk about Legacy. We're going to give viewpoints on from all perspectives on that. And we're going to talk about when it comes to like matchups, who we should be resourcing to get advice from. Me personally, I was like resourcing at the event to like various people that play Legacy on the pro side of things. Adam had disagreed, and he was talking about like the Reddit and Facebook group. So we're just going to discuss that. We're going to give viewpoints, and we're going to debate a little bit here and there as well.
Okay.
Yep, it's going to be a good time. We're going to have various topics we're going to talk about. And at the end of the day, we're going to talk some Magic with them among compadres, among Swish members. It'll be a good time. But without further ado, why don't we go ahead and call Adam? He keeps ignoring my calls. What can I say? Unbelievable.
What is his problem?
I know. I haven't sent a single call yet, but in my heart, he ignored it.
Oh, he ignored the calls that he didn't get.
Exactly. Yep. You ignore 100% of them you don't get.
Dude.
What a jerk.
I know. Let's try this again. 75th time the charm. I think I'm adding it correct. Let's see.
Hey, he's probably just ignoring the call.
Maybe I can add him. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
he ignored it again.
Think he's here.
Yo.
You know, I should really learn to not accept these calls that say potential spam.
You're right.
Oh, that's a thing with Larry.
You ain't lying.
On a side note, I do love spam.
That's disgusting.
That's 50-50 on it.
That is disgusting.
No.
What is wrong
Fried
with you?
spam, hot rice, a little bit of soy sauce, a little bit of egg, boom, best breakfast in the world.
Hey, you've never been to
sure.
Waffle House if you calling that the best breakfast in the world. Are you getting food poisoning, sir? It ain't the best breakfast.
I have been to Waffle House. I've traveled for Waffle House. My friends wanted to travel for Waffle House, and I only came along so I could check out liquor stores.
Bro, if you ever want to travel to a Waffle House, I'm in.
I mean, that was great. I mean, I also got 2 bottles of Weller for State Mint, so can't beat that.
It's true.
Yeah, like, Dewey chased the unicorn. His friends got Waffle House. I'm in Camp Dewey here.
And also came with a birthday Waffle House because that's their jam. So
nice.
I'm thinking about this, Dewey. Here's what we should franchise, right? A Waffle House / bar. Think about it.
So So like that concept's very interesting because they would literally just go from like one section of the bar where they got too drunk, and then they would just slide right over to the breakfast spot where you would sober them up.
It's a win-win for all parties involved.
Right. So then once they're done sobering up, right, you send them right back over to the bar. It's a perpetual cycle.
They'll never leave.
So this is like a casino, but better.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're always getting something for your money instead of like donating it to the tables. See, I think it's a
I mean, if you
win-win.
donate enough to the table, you also get free everything. So
You ain't wrong. And I guess if you go to casinos in Vegas, for example, you get free alcohol at least.
Yeah, that's how they keep you at the table, my dude.
Oh, I know. Oh, I know how it works. That's why I don't play the progressive games and stuff. I was always a poker player. They hate the poker rooms. That's where they make the least amount of money. Poker players suck to them. But that's how it be sometimes. You know, you can't love everyone. But they make so much out them slots. It's crazy. But yeah, Adam, welcome. It's nice that you didn't ignore our calls anymore. We've called you like 75 times.
You know what I said? It kept coming up as potential spam, and I mean, I should have known you were involved.
You're right. I do like spamming the world with the greatness that I possess. But no, we're glad to have you back on, all jokes aside. I know we went out to lunch with another legacy player here in the GR area, Brandon Darnell. We went and got to have some lunch, talk to him about the Legacy of Pit event we did over the weekend. I'm not going to tell his dilemma that he had in that event because that's his story to tell, but Steven knows it, Dewey knows it. Maybe.
It was quite a good story.
Oh, man. But,
Yeah, thanks for having me back, guys.
yeah, no, it's good. We haven't had you on in quite some time. I know it's been months. Maybe is this the first time this year? I don't remember the last time we actually had you on. We do a ton of shows.
I don't remember the exact date.
Yeah, I
I
don't.
mean, let's be real. The last like 2 years are just kind of blurring together at this point.
You're not wrong there. You know, we're still in the pandemic while transitioning out of a pandemic right now. It's weird. Just a weird time. Thankfully, we're still able to do the podcast, which started. We probably wouldn't even be doing this if not for the pandemic. So, it's pretty awesome that we're getting to do this. I've been enjoying it since me and Steven decided to start. It's been even better when we got Dewey to join up with us.
everything's better with Dewey.
Everything's better with Dewey. No,
I mean,
You're
he's
right.
not wrong.
it'd be even better to like be cube drafting with him, but you know he likes to send like call messages like, "Oh, my car won't move. I don't know what to do."
You know, I finally got my car obviously working from all that, and then I popped the tire, so I had to replace my tires. Um, I'm just like, used cars are selling for a decent bit right now, and I'm at a really awkward spot where I'm like, I should just sell this car. I'm done with it. I have put so much turmoil into this car, so much money in this car, but at the same time, it's like I've pretty much replaced all the important, heavy, expensive stuff. You know, when you hit about 150,000 miles in the car too. So like, whoever I give this to, I just know that when I do it, it's gonna be smooth sailing for them because I've replaced everything.
Oh yeah, they're gonna get a steal because you did
Yeah.
all the work.
Yeah, I mean, like if you get a 90, all the bearings have been replaced, new brakes, new tires. I have rebuilt the brain of the computer, I mean the brain of the car. Like,
Yeah, you should have bought a new car like a year ago.
oh well, like this stuff just kind of happened this year, is the thing, and it didn't seem like a good time to buy a car because one, I was buying a house, and you shouldn't, you know, pull up an extra line of credit or anything like that while you're in the middle of buying a house. And then after buying the house, that drained a good chunk of my funds. So then I didn't want to buy a new house while I still owed money on a car. So it just didn't seem like the best. But right now, I'm looking at the potential of trading it in and buying a new car. But apparently, even though the used car market is crazy, the new car market's also crazy because there's tons of supply shortages for the manufacturers, so they can't get new cars out either. So
Yeah, my wife and I got lucky, and we had to buy our new car just before that really kind of took hold in the automotive industry,
Mm-hmm.
and we ended up buying a brand new Civic
Nice.
for less money than we would have spent on a like 2-year-old Civic that had 3K miles on it.
Oof, yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
Zach's.
Best up.
Yeah, they're just saying in the chat right now that there's a chip shortage, is what it was, and it's they're getting laid off half the time.
That's brutal. Yeah, my friend actually works in some of the, not like directly through GM, but they're the suppliers. It's similar to what I did at Meridian Magnesium, but he works at one, and he's been laid off for like this whole year. Like
Makes sense.
it's been super crazy how it is right now. But I just took a position with Carvana, and they're booming right now, so good for them.
They are. They are a very interesting company.
They are.
And
So
where they're putting all their money and all their bets on for the car industry is kind of crazy to me. I'm gonna see if it pays off, but
yeah. So funny enough, tell you a little story about the person that's training me. They went and told me, they're like, yeah, one time I was getting diesel gas, and this truck just blocked me in, and this guy gets out and was like cussing me out because he was a car dealer or whatever, ran like a small dealership. It was like, you're taking away all of our livelihoods and stuff, about referring to Carvana, obviously. And I was like, that's just crazy. I was like, is Carvana's system really like beating down the like local dealers? I don't know too much in regards to that.
They are circumventing the standard car model is what they're trying to do. So they skip. So normal time, you expect you go to get a used car, you go to some lot, or you have to buy with off of someone off a personal sale, right?
Right.
And you got to haggle with them back and forth, find a good price, hope you're not getting screwed over, hope you're having all the good information. Carvana says no, we're gonna get rid of all that. Instead, we have baseline prices across the board. They're not insanely good prices, but they're never a bad price. They're always going to be just a little bit over if you're good at purchasing a used car, what you would get. So for a lot of people, they're very happy with it because they can just go online, pick the car they want, and it's delivered right to you. Right? It's brought right to you, and then if you want to sell your car to them, they'll do it as well. They'll come by and look at your car, give an inspection, give you a price, drop off your new car. They take care of all of it. They take care of anything they can do for your car. The reason why they're so interesting, the other cool thing they do for a marketing perspective is that there's this whole vending machine car thing you can do with them. If you don't want to have it dropped off, you can go and pick up your car in a giant car vending machine.
Yep.
So, their whole bet, though, is that they are making the process easy enough, right? With a slight uptick on costs, and then they're hoping you're going to finance with them. Because they make the whole process so easy, you'll finance with them. And those two layers of it, they're hoping that will help them really break into this used car market. And it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out in the next couple of years once all their debts come up.
Yeah, no, it definitely would. I know the location that I don't know how long. I know it's been around for at least 2 years here in Grand Rapids. What they do, I see a question in the chat. What they do, they have their own financing, but it's partnered with a bank.
Yes, they partner with a bank and they want you to finance with them through that bank. So that's how they make money. It's just like a car dealership, though. If you think about it, car dealerships also want you to finance with them because they make most of their money from that financing. They don't you don't make that much money off of a sale. You make the money off of the percent interest gains.
Correct.
Of financing. So.
Yeah, my job there is pretty much where I'm delivering those cars, or I'm picking the cars up they're selling and all that kind of stuff. That's my gist of it. I know I actually gotta go tomorrow and go get my chauffeur's license, but they're paying for it, so I don't care. But no, it's cool. It's another car industry I've been working thing. I'm trying to figure out if I'm gonna be able to cope with driving every day for long periods of time.
Weird, yeah, that's good. No, that's so new to you.
It is
so new.
It's been a while since I've drove a long distance. I don't know if I can handle it. I might lose my mind.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You mean you didn't already?
You said what? No, we're not close to losing my mind yet. Y'all haven't got to that level of Larry yet.
Yeah, I don't believe you.
We'll get there, though. We'll get there in due time. But yeah, again, Adam, thanks for coming on with us. We talked about what we did over the weekend. Did you have anything fun or exciting happen for you?
So I actually went to the movies for the first time since, the before times.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of neat. Yeah, my wife wanted to go see Dear Evan Hansen.
Oh, nice.
Is that good?
Uh, yes. Oh man, there's a lot going on in that movie, like on a story level,
Uh-huh.
and like here I am days later, still kind of processing. Like,
Those are
is
good
this
movies.
okay?
Yeah, it's a pretty deep musical from my understanding. I haven't seen it yet either, but Julia listens to the soundtrack, um, and has told me a little bit about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was what got my wife started. Was she had been listening to the soundtrack over and over and over again, and she's like, I really want to go see it. I really want to go see it. So we finally went and saw it Saturday night,
Nice.
and it is a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
The story just really makes you question like how rigid your like morals and ideologies are.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So yeah, it's pretty wild. Movie's really interesting. So
No,
would definitely recommend.
I haven't seen the musical, but I have heard that the musical itself is significantly better than the movie, only because some things don't translate very well.
Fair.
And I can see that happening often times when you change from one medium to another.
Yep.
Yeah, could definitely believe that.
I can honestly say I've never heard of this movie a day in my life. Um, but that's definitely not my genre by any stretch. But did you enjoy your movie experience overall?
Yeah, like it still feels really weird.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'm generally really cautious in the public because I work with the public and my wife works in a nursing home. So
Sure.
like it kind of felt weird to just feel like, yep, let's just go do this thing in a room full of people. But yeah, like it was nice to do something that felt normal again, even if it didn't like feel super normal in the moment, doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice.
No, it's awesome. Glad you got to enjoy your weekend. I know Steven and I was talking with Andrew last night about going to a movie Friday. Gonna go see some
We were.
Venom 2.
Yep.
I'm pretty excited for Venom too.
Yeah,
I realized that being coming out. That's kind of rad.
I ain't gonna lie. I got a couple days to see Venom 1, but I think we'll squeeze it in there somewhere.
Figure it out.
You know?
Definitely worth doing.
Yeah, it would probably help. I'm more hyped for the new Spider-Man movie personally that's coming out in December, November, somewhere around there.
Oh yeah, no way home.
Oh yeah, that movie's gonna be lit.
Yep.
I'm excited for it. I'm a big comic book movie guy. I don't usually go to theaters to see anything that's like non-Marvel Studios because of how bad they've been in the past. But I did go see Suicide Squad and I enjoyed that.
Fair enough.
You know, so sometimes you just gotta take a gamble and hopefully it pans out. Deadpool was also good when that came out, so
Yep.
hit or miss. Yeah, I do the movie pass now, as many people know. I enjoy using that, so I get to go to movies more often than I probably have ever done. So I've seen a lot. I even seen that movie Old. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
That's what I
the
wanted to go see. We
M.
never
Night
did end up
Shyamalan, right?
doing
Yeah.
it, but
I thought the movie was really good. I don't really know how to explain it without spoiling it, so I'm not going to. But
nice.
I'd recommend
call.
people watch it. It was a good film. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, M. Night Shyamalan really comes up with some crazy stuff, man.
I don't know
Really
if-
Yeah, big bag though.
Don't know if I've
But-
watched any of his films like fully before. Like I know
Okay.
of his movies, like Signs and things like that, but
Yeah,
never
I
actually
believe
watched them.
like one of his first really good ones was Sixth Sense. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, never seen that either.
Yeah, that one's like an absolute classic. It's a
Yeah.
great movie.
I know of it.
Yeah, it's an excellent movie. I mean, just literally amazing. Honestly, my grandparents really liked that movie, and they showed it to me when I was like 10 or something.
Mhm.
It's really good. Because I really enjoyed Signs, and so they told me
Mhm.
about that movie and thought I might like it too, and I did. It was very good.
And he's actually had a pretty amazing track record.
Yeah,
And then he hit a really bad streak.
right.
Yeah,
Like Lady in the Water, for
that
example,
was
was
exactly the one.
pretty
Lady
bad,
in the
right?
Water is like such a weird movie, and not like
Yeah.
good weird.
The Village was really weird too.
The Village, I think my whole thing with it is I think The Village was a really fun concept,
Yeah.
but because of how it was marketed, it ended up really pissing people off. But that's like the
Fair.
thing he's known for. I don't know. For
Yeah.
me, the final straw was Last Airbender.
Yeah,
You took something that I loved and you just basically destroyed it.
Fair. Yeah, I didn't see that one.
Mhm. But he is back to doing some pretty good stuff ever since he started off with Split.
Okay.
Yeah, which was
yeah.
the sequel to Unbreakable. I really like Split, but I haven't seen Glass.
I have not seen Glass either, but the other two were very good.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, like I said, I've only seen the one, and I enjoyed it. So if he has other good films, I definitely need to go back and watch them.
His classics are the ones to go to.
Yeah,
Your Sixth Sense, your Unbreakable, your Signs. Those are the ones that really, really made him super popular. So.
right. Yeah, like I said, no signs because that's the Mel Gibson film, I believe.
Mhm.
I definitely need to go back and watch that. I know my family all enjoyed that movie when it first came out, but I never watched it.
Right.
But yeah, let's go ahead. We're gonna go jump into the stuff. Dewey is going to be moderating today. Are you
Yeah.
ready to do this, Dewey? Are you gonna get ran
I am.
over like the
This
presidential
this is my
moderators?
rules for a debate. This is my
Mm-hmm.
rules for a debate. Now, from my understanding here, our main topic is going to be focusing on somewhat on legacy. And then we got a few subcategories for this. We're going to be talking about the taxes and reanimator matchup, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be talking about a local versus a tournament prep and play concept. And then also the idea of whether or not, when you are looking for that advice, you talk to a deck specialist versus, let's say, a format pro versus, let's say, a tournament grinder. Does that capture the correct conversation or the correct debate here?
I mean, it just
Yeah, that seems about right.
explain the local versus tournament prep and play, because on the surface, that's
I think that there is a lot, from what I could glean from your guys' conversation, I think there's a different preparation that goes into preparing or going to play at, let's say, a local FNM, a
mm,
local event, let's say a 1K, as compared to, let's say, going to um, an SCG Open, a
right.
Yeah.
GP, a Pro
Sounds like a
Tour.
good sounds like a good concept to me.
Yep. Yep.
Like I think there's a they're very different mindset when you go into those things. The deck specialist, format pro, and tournament grinder, in my mind, there, if you have someone that plays one deck, they've been playing it for ages, for example, right? That to me is a deck specialist, and they play those kind of decks across multiple formats. They may specialize and focus really in on one, but they're able to take that knowledge and cross it over to the other formats. A format pro is the one that just really hones in on one format, right? Like they only play Legacy, they only play Modern. They may dabble in the other ones, but it just comes up on occasion if they have to go to a tournament. But if not, they don't really care for it. When they're online and practicing and playing, they're going to do that. When they're playing for fun, they're going to play that format. And then for me, the last area really is the tournament grinder. Your tournament grinder is the one that are they're going to go to any tournament. They'll spend a week or 2 weeks or a month prepping for it to an extent, but they're going to try to pick up the tournaments back to back to back. If like for me, I would probably put myself in a tournament grinder. I have legacy tournament coming up. I'm going to practice for about a week to 2 weeks to try to learn, see where the meta's at, and go back to it and try to pick up the correct deck. I've got standard is my focus right now because it's a new format. I got to learn it for the invitational, so I'm only focusing on standard.
Yeah.
I'll pick up modern in a bit, but that's fine. It requires less prep time for modern because I know modern. So that to me is a tournament grind.
Yep.
Yep.
So
Agreed.
for the sake of clarification here, Dewey,
Yeah.
we're trying to differentiate between a format pro
Yeah.
and a deck specialist. So where do we lump guys like Brian Koval and Bryant Cook?
There's going to be crossover, no
Sure.
doubt. There's going to be
Mhm.
crossover, no doubt. But I think that that's the exception to the rule is that a person or two are going to come along and they are a format pro and they're a deck specialist, right? More often than not, you might find someone that is only a deck specialist.
Fair
So,
enough.
for the debate format, I'm gonna give you guys 5 minutes to give your initial response, 3 minutes for the rebuttal on the other side, 2 minutes on the other side to give a final rebuttal. So it's gonna be 5 minutes, and then 3 minutes, 3 minutes, then 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Is that fair?
Yeah.
You mean
Or is
five
it too
minutes
much?
for each? Because I believe
I,
Sorry, go ahead.
I said 5 minutes for the initial response to your thoughts on it. So let's say when we get to the topic of taxes versus reanimator, because that was the initial conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get 5 minutes to talk about why you think the matchup's favored one way or the other, your thoughts on it.
Okay.
After you both present your initial thoughts on it, both parties get 3 minutes for a response.
Mm-hmm.
We can also just go initial response, then rebuttal. The downside I see in that is then you don't get to present your initial thoughts on it. You're only responding to their thoughts. So
Right.
that's where the deviation would be from like a presidential debate.
Can I potentially add one thing here, Dewey?
Yeah.
After they both give their initial opinion and before the rebuttal,
Yeah.
could I join in and like say what my opinion would be?
Oh, absolutely. How
Yeah, I was
about
gonna say I
this?
want to have Steven an opportunity to like make his like opinion known as well.
Yeah, I want to hear both of their points,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm gonna say who I agree with, and then maybe after the rebuttal, I'll say like one more thing. Um,
Okay.
Obviously, you're the moderator, so you probably can't really pick sides.
I'm not going to try to pick sides. How about we do this then? We'll do 5 minutes for initial responses from both of them, 5 minutes for your interjection. If we use less, that's fine. 3 minutes for rebuttals from both of them, and then 2 minutes from you for the final comment.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Okay,
All right.
Sweet.
that works for me.
All right.
And I
Now, do you want
figure
to start off with this initial topic, or do you want to build into that topic?
for which so
The
we'll,
taxes versus reanimate.
we can
So I
we
felt
can
like
build into that one since that seemed
okay,
like that's where it like all started. I feel like that's where it can all end.
okay,
Yeah.
that works for me.
Yep. Let you re-update your stuff really quick.
All right, then I'm going to go local versus tournament prep and play, the different mindsets that go into that, and what your thoughts are on that. Then we'll lead into the deck specialist, format pro, or tournament grinder when you are looking at, let's say, an upcoming event. Who do you take more advice from,
Mm-hmm.
and who would you lean on more than the other? Um, I guess, do you like that one, or do you would like, because that kind of to me falls into the whole pro versus Reddit thing. I think this is a better way to encapsulate that because the pro versus Reddit, I mean, Reddit's pros are on Reddit to this kind of thing, or
Mm-hmm.
they're on different things. So I thought this would be a nice way to like break it down because a local player might be one of these, right? So,
Yeah.
okay. So we'll do that. And so we're going to start off first here with Adam. So, Adam, so when you're approaching the idea of a local tournament or going to a larger tournament such as an Open or a GP, do you have different thought process into the prep for that when you go to play that event as well? What's your approach on there? And if it's a huge enough difference, I'd like you to elaborate why you have that difference.
So, I mean, to start off with, I think I'm kind of an anomaly here because I'm the kind of person that's always looking at the broader spectrum
Hmm.
and using the locals as a testing ground for these notions. Now, I will admit that is to my detriment. I think that it is definitely more beneficial for someone to take a much harder stance one way or the other when you're prepping for an event. If you're preparing for like a smaller local event, know what's around, know what people are doing. If you know for a fact that your local scene tends to favor, combo decks or specifically graveyard combo decks, right? Like, prepare for that. Understand that.
Hmm.
On the other side, if you're going to a large event, especially when it comes to Legacy, that's going to be a huge, broad field. And,
Right.
like, you need to think about a more universally applicable list. Because while sure, at the top tables of that event, you're absolutely going to run into your Delvers, your show and tell variants, Storm of some kind, blah blah blah. You're also going to like it's not unreasonable that like in round 1 or 2 you get paired against Enchantress or Bomberman.
Hmm.
Like people are going to play the decks they have and enjoy because Legacy is expensive.
Right.
And you're gonna run into tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, like fringe style strategies, or decks that people are just put together because it stomped their local events and they thought it was a good idea, having not tested against a broader field. But yes, I absolutely think that you should look at the two types of event differently. Your local scene, you can be a little more laser focused, right? You can know that your local community tends to play a certain way.
Yeah.
And when that's the case, you can pack extra tools to beat that or slant your list one way or another. When it comes to a much broader field, like you have to ask yourself, what am I willing to lose to?
Okay.
So are you have to make a broadly applicable list that's going to have 15 sideboard slots or less to help you shore this up. Now, what that comes down to is you're always going to lose to something.
Mm-hmm.
You have to concede to yourself, okay, am I willing to lose, in the case of taxes, am I willing to lose a fair mid-range mirror, like Maverick or Jund, right? Or am I willing to shave a few points versus combo? Am I willing to lose to Enchantress or mono black curses? Like, these are things that you could feasibly run into in a large field like a GP or a larger event. Like, are you going to spend a lot of time preparing for that matchup? I wouldn't. Like, you could well run into Enchantress.
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth, like, spending 15 hours testing the taxes versus Enchantress matchup and dedicating 3 sideboard slots to? Absolutely not. Because you'd be lucky to run into it twice all day. Or I suppose unlucky if you think the matchup's unfavorable. But it's definitely something that has to be on your mind. So when you start choosing your sideboard slots, your flex slots, maybe give a little nod to the fact that you could run into this. And if it's something you're super soft to, pick a more flexible slot, a more flexible option.
Yeah, very reasonable. You've got about a minute left. It sounds like you've kind of finished up your thought there. The one thing I'd like to add then is you mentioned that they're going to be playing the decks they have. That's what because Legacy is expensive. Does your thought process change a little bit if you were to say approach Modern, Pioneer, or Standard?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're talking younger formats where they're touching the reserve list and staples tend to be a little cheaper, current times excluded because the world is on fire.
Right.
But like in a normal circumstance, absolutely. Like when you start touching younger formats and you're not touching thousands and thousands of dollars worth of reserve list staples or old cards that don't get reprinted enough, you absolutely need to kind of change that a little bit because it is much easier for someone to put themselves on a quote unquote best deck as opposed to, oh, well, I have, mono red dragon stompy floating around. Yes,
Right.
is the new like red prison shell better? Oh, absolutely. But I don't own all those cards and I don't really care to put it together. I just want to go play some Legacy for the weekend.
Okay. It's very fair. So just to make sure I'm summarizing this properly, you're saying you use the local tournaments to prepare for the larger ones. You'll accept the detriments that come from the playing and being a more hyper focus on that local meta. And then when you move on to the larger tournaments, you're just going to adjust your main board and your sideboard appropriately to cast a really wider net.
Sorry. I'm gonna play the more broad, like universal list at a local event.
At the local event.
Correct. If I get dumped at a local, like because
You
I
accept that.
That's cool.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So then next up, Larry.
I want to input some input before you start the timer. This has nothing to do with this topic. One other thing we need to talk about. I want to do a debate about taxes 60 versus Yorion as well.
We can layer that right into the Legacy taxes versus Reanimator conversation.
Yeah, I just wanted to put that in there because it just came to me.
Yeah.
I was talking with Stephen Bott earlier, and
that was a big point of the initial conversation as well.
Yeah,
correct,
huge.
Correct. Yeah. Yep, just wanted to make sure that. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yep. All right, so for local versus tournament prep and play, local first. If we're talking about where our local FNM/1Ks, I do think that it's going to be based on what your local meta is going to be. Like, for example, the Modern one over the weekend, the 2K. I was going to play Bring the Light Scape Shift because I feel like it has a great hammer matchup, which is heavily played in this area. And that's how I'm going to attack our local events, whether it being a 1K over at Game On or a 1K Legacy tournament that they're going to have over at Warden's store in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to like a larger scale, like the Legacy Pit event, how I approach that event is I'm going to give up those rogue matchups. There's going to be the pairing lottery when it comes to Legacy and Modern. I think Modern has it a little bit at a higher percentage than Legacy does because, as mentioned, Legacy's way more expensive. So a lot of people are going to stick. But when it comes to like past like the second round, you're starting to get more of the dedicated grinders. Percentage wise, you're getting a lot of more of the Jonathan Blanks, the Mapsons, those kind of players. Where if they don't have the quote unquote best deck, they're going to be able to get their hands on the quote unquote best deck. So those are the matchups I'm going to turn my focus on. So my focus when I prepared to play taxes at this last one was I want to see how's my Delver matchup, how's my Doomsday matchup, and how's my Bant matchup. Those are the three main decks I was targeting. I knew I was giving up a percentage in the mirror because I was inexperienced when they came to the mirror, so the little bit of time I had for testing wasn't going to let me master it.
Right.
So I knew I was going to have to get lucky in that match. But when it came to the other top matchups, which those are the ones I took because at the time they were the ones that were showing the highest percentage. Obviously, the pool basing off of was very small because we only have the Magic Online events currently. But I chose Bant, which I found Bant as being a favorable matchup. I had a good sideboard plan that I got from Chase Masters, and it worked out well. And it transitioned well to the tournament because I did well against like Jonathan Blank, for example, who's on Bant. That's how I'm going to do it. When it comes to the first couple rounds, I'm going to have to get a little lucky on the pairing lottery. If I go up against a rogue deck, like I lost to 8 Walla because I couldn't interact with them on the draw when they put a million things on turn 1. That's nature of the beast. Sometimes you run into those kind of decks which aren't heavily played. But at the same time, when I started to play against like the higher played decks like Bant, when I started to like string some wins together and I started getting better in the better brackets, I played against Bant multiple times. I played against the Jeskai Urza deck, which I didn't even know was a deck before I showed up due to my lack of legacy experience.
Right.
And I did quite well against that. Again, I think those kind of matchups were actually favorable for Texas, in my opinion. And at a later time, we could discuss why I feel that way. But that's how I'm approaching it. I'm going to pick like the top decks. I'm going to focus on. I'm going to do target testing, and I'm going to hopefully get a little lucky against the decks that might be rogue decks that I'm not going to be very good against. So, example, if I'm playing Doomsday and I run into Burn, I'm just going to have to pray. It's you got to pick and choose with these larger formats. You're not going to be good against everything. I had 14 sideboard slots because one was taken up by Yorion. That's not a lot of room to like have a weapon, especially when you're playing 1-0s in an 80 card deck. Like that's just the nature of it.
All right. Got about a minute here left, so I want to ask you once again. You were focusing because the conversation is really around legacy. When you're picking those top decks, you basically concede to just not knowing the matchups for these other ones because there's just not enough time to test it. When it's a format like Modern, Standard, Pioneer, where the format's a little bit smaller, not by they're getting larger and larger nowadays, but a little bit smaller. It's your approach still the same thing. You're going to focus on those top tier decks and not really worry about other rogue decks.
Yeah, so I think Modern is actually a little bit harder than Legacy because I think Modern has the problem where no matter if you're like a top grinder or a new player, like it's easier to get your hands on anything compared to obviously Modern prices are starting to spike a little bit. But let's look at Stand for example. Standard, you can go and pretty much play anything you want in that format.
Right.
So you could literally play against everything. But the one benefit is because the top decks are on a smaller scale, like list-wise, like the number of different decks, it's easier to take those 15 slots. I think 15 is the perfect number for a format like Standard. I could argue like why I think the sideboard slots need up, but that's a discussion for another time.
Nice. All right. And then next here, Steven, your interjection.
Um, it sounds like they both have pretty similar thoughts on this particular topic. So
Yeah.
I don't have a huge amount to say here. I agree with really what they're saying. Like I said, I think they're both pretty much on the same page with this one. So there's not a whole lot for me to say. I agree. Um, you know, kind of an example of the whole local metagaming thing. This weekend when I played Elementals, I played a fourth Cavern of Souls in my deck, literally because Zach Allen and Raja Suleiman were both going to be at the tournament, and I knew they were playing blue white because Allen had just posted the list on Twitter, and I saw that they were main decking 3 Spreading Seas, and so I wanted a fourth Cavern of Souls, so I had one more copy of Cavern to one up the number of Spreading Seas they were playing,
Mhm.
and as I'm working on my article this week, I included in the article that um, I was never really comfortable playing 23 lands anyway, which is what Canister has started doing. Almost all my losses with the deck have been to miss land drops, so I was perfectly fine with just doing what Canister did and cutting that forest, but instead of adding, say, a fourth Muldrifter to the deck, I just added a 24th land, being the fourth Cavern of Souls, kind of as a little utility land. But that was an example of just like very laser focused metagaming. If I would have been going to an open or a GP or whatever, I probably would have just stuck with a more generic land because the fourth cavern definitely has its problems as well. And at a big event, I'm much less likely to run into a specific player. Um, and modern right now is quite healthy and very diverse. So I'm not just gonna play a fourth cavern of souls willy nilly.
Very fair. Yeah, and I think we had seen that as well with the Midland 1Ks when we were going to when the local players there knew that we were coming, they all had a plan for our player group or our team because they knew the decks that we were going to be on or most likely would be on. So,
Yep. And this is why I've been playing subtlety and elementals too. Canister's been off subtlety, but
hmm
I know full well that at a Grand Rapids local event, we're gonna have multiple Tron players. Nick Edgerly is gonna play Tron. Noah
hmm
Huizenga is probably gonna play Tron. Some other random people are just gonna play Tron. Like this is what people do. They play Tron. And obviously that's gonna be a thing at a big event too. And I would still probably want subtlety there as well because I
hmm
want a little more percentage against Tron, and subtlety comes in other matchups as well. Um, but I just, I know that I'm probably going to play a big mana deck. People around here really like Amulet too, regardless of how good it is right now. And so I want the tools to attack those matchups. Whereas, Canister, he's playing on Moto. The field's a little more wide, but it's also just a different field. Like the metagame is just different. So
hmm
you're not going to want to play all the exact same cards that Canister plays at every event because you need to attack a different metagame.
Fair. Well, I'm not sure. Would you guys like time for a rebuttal, by the way? Sounds like you guys are pretty much on
Yeah,
the same page.
yeah. If I
Yeah, I
go,
don't
but
really know that we need a rebuttal for
yeah,
this
I don't
one.
think because I think we're actually similar
Yeah. Yeah.
mindsets when it comes to local versus tournament prep and play. Unless Adam has any additional comments he'd like to make.
No, I think we're pretty well in the same boat. Like
Yeah.
we both kind of agreed that you need to look at a broader field when you're at a bigger tournament.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So the next area is when you are going to this tournament, who are you going to lean more of your thoughts on? Are you thinking about the deck specialist, wanting to listen to their opinion heavier than like a format pro, or listening to like a tournament grandmaster? Am I capturing that appropriately from your guys' last conversation?
Yeah. In a nutshell,
Reasonably
yes.
enough, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So Adam, I had you start off first, and Larry, I'm going to have you start off here.
Yep.
So when you're going to a tournament, a format that you may not know as well, who are you going to listen to more than not, and how do you decide about that?
All right. If I'm going to a big tournament, let's just use the Legacy for example. The Legacy Pit event. The first thing I'm doing is I'm going to figure out what deck I'm going to want to play, and now I need to find out who I'm going to resource for because I'm inexperienced or I have the lack of experience compared to other formats. This is where I'm going to go to who's going to be playing this deck more in general that I consider a really good player. For this example, I went to two players. I'm probably gonna say their handle wrong because I wouldn't say I'm a like religious watcher of their product, but I want to say his name is JX Cloud. Apologize if I'm saying it wrong. Adam will be able to correct that on his portion. And then the other one is Yawgmoth, who does pretty well on Magic Online. Both players do quite well with the Taxes builds, and that's who I went to. In my little amount of time, I didn't have time to like tool a deck up myself, so went off the list based on them. So the next step I have after that is now I'm going to reach out to some players that I know personally that are very good with those archetypes as well. I've reached out to Chase Masters, for example. He was able to additionally get me a full sideboard guide and tips, strategies, all that kind of stuff for the event, which was super awesome, super beneficial. And then I had a few other people I reached out to as well who plays a ton of Legacy. I even talked to Adam about like some of the Legacy stuff. I even did like I won't say a stream, but a recording with him to try to get an idea for it. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look through and I'm going to resource out to some like Magic pros, higher tier Magic players, whether they have made previous articles or I see them in person. Like I saw a few of them over at the Legacy Pit, and after rounds that I might have lost or I played that I thought the match it went super close. And I ask and be like, hey, was this correct or was this not correct? And that's where I'm resourcing. The one thing I don't utilize that I know a lot of players do utilize is like the Facebook groups. I don't use Reddit, so I don't know how any of that works on there. But like the Facebook groups, I'm a part of like many Facebook groups. I would never use any of them because I don't think they're very beneficial, and I think they'll actually hurt you in the long run and actually give you some. There's a few pros that go in those groups and they do post on there, and those can be insightful when they like post their article links or they post like their streams. I definitely recommend people use those to get reach out for that. But when you're trying to get like ready for an event, I really wouldn't recommend using those outside of like getting it as a gateway to like some of those like top streamers or top pros like information they can help you with.
Okay. And like, why are the Facebook groups and the Reddit groups so detrimental? I guess because we've got a little bit of time left here for
Yep.
your minute, 5
The
minutes.
main reason I think they're detrimental is because there is a lot of to put it in a nutshell, a lot of hard-headed players that are in those groups that won't change their ways, and they'll be very, very toxic in the way they explain their reasoning for it. So then it no longer turns into like a learning session on those groups, but more of I'm right, you're wrong, you need to listen to me kind of thing. And I never found that very beneficial. Like I think when it comes to
Sure.
Magic, you have to be open to being to constructive criticism, and a lot of players don't do that in those groups.
Okay. And then we're gonna head on over to Adam here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess the first thing I think, kind of the core of this disagreement here is that I believe strongly in going to what I will often refer to as the hive mind, and this is the Facebook groups, the Discords, the subreddits, and while I will concede that Larry has a point, you're going to get your players in any collective of players that refuse to change their ways, that I'm right, you're wrong, deal with it. That's a small segment. And the beauty of the hive mind, the beauty of these collectives of players that fixate around certain archetypes, is that there's a lot of voices. And you can start filtering out some of the people that are, being hard-headed or maybe making really ridiculous suggestions. For example, there's a new white enchantment that just came out in the new Innistrad set. And there were a couple of people in some of the taxes circles that started kind of fixating on it. Curse of Silence. And they're like, oh, I'm going to play this on my sideboard. I'm going to play this on my sideboard. And there were probably like 3 or 4 people the day that it was spoiled that got really jazzed about it. And then the true hive mind, the collective, came together and went, this isn't good. This doesn't do anything we need it to do. And that's kind of the beauty of it. And like, sure, you're going to see times where the hive mind is wrong. But I think that the collective experience of that large swath of people that are dedicating themselves to the archetype or to the deck is super valuable. Now, not to say that a pro or a tournament grinder's insight can't be useful as well, but like we talked about, Dewey, if I'm looking at pros who have, you know, if I'm looking to pros for resources when it comes to especially formats like Legacy that are so broad and so powerful, I'm going to look to a pro that has plenty of reps. I'm going to, if I want to play some sort of Tundra deck, I'm going to look to Brian Coble. If I want to play the Epic Storm, I'm going to look to the guy who created it, Brian Cook. If I want to play Elves, I'm going to look at people like Julian Nab. I'm going to look at Reed Duke. Guys that have put in hundreds of thousands of reps over and over and over. And now, like, some of these guys may or may not have, may have won a pro tour. Some of these guys may have professional accolades to their name. And then you've got other guys like, Phil Gallagher, who, like, the man made some pretty good runs at the SCG, but, like, doesn't have a professional credit to his name. But the man was the linchpin of the Death and Taxes community for years before guys like XJ Cloud. About the same time that we started seeing everyone talking about Wesco. And so you had these two divergent school of thoughts in the two. And now Wesco's pretty much given it up, from what I can tell. But Phil's still around. And so these are the guys whose information I want. The guys that are constantly playing and tuning and testing and taking another look. The guys that, when Ren 6 took over Legacy, they're like, wow, Thalia looks real bad. How do we make it not so bad? And sure, like, eventually a lot of people went, well, we're just gonna pack it away for now. Try something else. But they tried. And they tried and they tried and they tried. And a lot of them hemorrhaged ticks and play points trying. Like, these are the people whose information I want. Like, these are the guys I think, or people I think, have the most valuable information because they're the ones constantly going at it. And again, a pro can have useful insights.
Right.
But I don't think a lot of pros dedicate themselves as completely and spend as much of their time and energy and resources into playing Legacy, into testing. And that's kind of the linchpin of the argument here. It was specifically Legacy. Because Modern shows up on the Pro Tour reasonable enough, or did. Standard shows up a ton. Pioneer, Limited. It's very rare that we see formats like Legacy and Vintage get a lot of professional spotlight. So a lot of these people, while they might like the format and play occasionally, they don't play that often because they're constantly spending the time on their professional career and they have to dedicate themselves to the formats that their professional career is going to require they play. And I get that, and I don't fault any of them for that. Now, on the other side of that, Larry had mentioned some specific pros that play a lot of Legacy that he had talked to in this given situation. And, like, that's great. It's great that you went to pros that talk about and play Legacy. One of them is a Tundra Mage. One of them is a Control player. Another one is a Depths player. Now, these guys are fantastic players, like, towards the top of their field. But they don't know the ins and outs of a totally separate archetype. So this is why I put so much stress on it being deck specialists. Because the format's deep, and the format's hard. Especially if you could be sleeving up Lion's Eye Diamond, or Force of Will and Brainstorm, and instead you choose Aether Vial and Flicker Wisp. Like, you've put yourself into hard mode already. You have to know what's up. So I want to get my information from people that have been in the trenches that chose either Violent Flicker Wisp,
Right.
and that they know what they're doing.
Okay. And then we're gonna head over to Steven.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with some of Adam's points. Obviously, deck specialization is very important. And I would certainly, I mean, Brian Koval, I mean, he's proven that he understands the Death and Taxes archetype. I mean, the dude literally won an SCG Invitational playing D&T in Modern. Like he gets it. He knows how to play D&T for sure. I think one thing to be really careful of. I typically I kind of hate hive mind mentality. It can be useful, but I think hive mind mentality can be very dangerous. It can lead to people just kind of not thinking for themselves, which I think could be really problematic in Magic, and I think a lot of people do it too much. Funny enough, at the last 2K at Galactic, Raja and I were talking a little bit about this on the way to go get food after the event had ended. He was talking about how literally everyone playing control decks were playing like 3 to 4 Shark Typhoon in their main deck because that is what Wafo Tapa and I can't remember Yellow Hat. Who's Yellow Hat again?
Gabriel
Who is
Nassif.
Yellow Hat on Moto. What'd you say?
Gabriel Nassif.
Yes. Wafo Tapa and Gabe Nassif were both advocating for 3 to 4 Shark Typhoons. And so literally everyone was just doing it because, you know, they thought they were supposed to. But Raja was saying how after testing, the card was just god awful. He thought the card was literally terrible, and that people, you know, a lot of people just don't think for themselves and don't actually play the card that much or test it that much before going to an event. They just look at the list and say, "Oh, I'm going to do this." But honestly, I was playing a little bit of blue-white at the time too. And yeah, the card felt really bad. Like you just didn't have, in a lot of matchups, you just like didn't have time to cycle it to get real value. And it was just kind of a really bad pure through mists. That being said, another point that I think is really important with the whole like pros versus deck specialist, and obviously some of them are like the same thing. Like Reed Duke is obviously a pro and a deck specialist. Like he's a Jund master in Modern. He's also a professional Magic player. He is also obviously an Elves, you know, master in Legacy. He's very good with that deck. But you know, if I were to try and get advice about, you know, playing any deck in Magic, I would be fairly confident going to somebody, say, like LSV. Talking to LSV about literally any deck is probably going to be very beneficial because LSV just has such a deep like being a professional Magic player involves more than just being a deck specialist. Really, really great Magic players, the professional Magic players, they just have an incredible understanding of how Magic works, and that gives you a lot of leverage no matter what format you're playing. You know, it's why they have so much success usually in multiple formats. You know, if LSV had to, or you know, say, you know, Reed Duke or any, you know, any pro, Brad Nelson, if these guys had to go prepare for a Legacy event, they would have a little bit of time, and they would use their prior knowledge and just their knowledge of how the game works, and they would be able to adapt and learn the format very quickly, and I think they would learn it very effectively and do well. So I definitely agree with some of Adam's points, but I think I would default to, you know, I would agree with Larry that I would generally default to pros advice. And you know, I used LSV a lot in this example. Another one I think would be really interesting, Matt Nass. You know, Matt Nass had incredible success on the Modern front playing decks like KCI. And I think he actually had pretty good success in Legacy too with Reanimator, if I remember correctly. But you know, if Matt Nass had to like test for an event, I'm pretty confident that with his understanding of just excuse me, how combo decks work, he would be like an incredible Storm or Doomsday player in Legacy, just because the dude just gets how combo works. He just understands how to play combo. And after a little bit of time adapting to the Legacy format, I think he would be much better than your average player playing any of those decks in Legacy. Um, that's it for me, Dewey.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with you quite a bit on that, actually. Like, for me, if Nas posted that he's on a combo deck and it's a deck that I know how to play, I'm just 100% going to snap off that deck for a tournament.
We literally had that happen in
Mhm.
one of the events over quarantine on Arena.
Yep. I was hem-hawing about 2 other decks, and he posted that he was big on the blue-green combo deck. I was like, done. I know that deck.
And then I hopped in the call. And you were considering playing something else, and I was like, why aren't we just playing the Matt Nass deck?
Yep.
Good, right?
Yep.
It's got to be good. He's winning with it.
Yeah.
And then you had very good success with that deck.
Yeah, I went day 2 on an open. No, day 2 on a qualifier.
Yeah, it was a qualifier.
That was the qualifier. Day 2 on the qualifier and got 6 wins. So.
Yep.
But I'm going to give now you guys a chance for rebuttal. So we'll start off. Do you guys want to go to the same person who started off to start the rebuttal, or would you prefer to alternate and go back?
I'm cool with whatever.
Yeah, same here.
Okay.
You make the call. You're the moderator.
No opinion. Cool. So we'll start off with Larry because you did start off as well.
Okay, just we'll start with the hive mind thing. I don't agree with that. The one thing I don't agree with the hive mind is and utilizing them for information is, at least I'm going to use the dredge hive mind for example, because it's the one that I know for obvious reasons. I would never use advice from them either, because a lot of them aren't good. A lot of these players just are a part of this hive mind, but they don't have any results outside of doing like they talk about, oh, I did this at my local FNM or my local Monday Night Modern, but they're not really doing anything that's going to benefit me to have trust that this is going to be good in a big tournament. So when I'm getting ready for a tournament, I'm going to still take the pros or the actual like grind advice over like a quote unquote hive mind, because I don't know if what they're telling me is actually going to benefit in what my goal to accomplish, and that's doing well at a big event. So that's pretty much the only rebuttal in regards to like the hive mind. The rest is yeah, like I know some of the pros I mentioned that they're specialties, but they're such good players that they're going to adapt with whatever deck they pick up. So I'm going to still trust what they're going to say over any random group that I find along the internet. And that's about all I gotta say for my rebuttal.
That's good. And then back to you, Adam.
So I guess there's a few points here I guess I want to cover. So a big difference I think where we're coming from, Larry, is that when you're looking at a hive mind, you're looking at a hive mind, like you said, like the dredge hive mind, for example, as it pertains to modern. We come back to a point where legacy is expensive. And because legacy is an expensive format, the hive minds for archetypes in this format are people that are very, very committed. They're people that have thrown thousands of dollars at their deck. They're grinding leagues on Moto or slamming matches in paper whenever they can. Like, it's a whole other level of dedication. And now, again, are there still bad ideas? Yes, absolutely. I go back to Curse of Silence. Like, there are still bad ideas. But as a general rule, the majority of the hive mind will come down on that and go, hey, that's not a very good idea. Here are the reasons that's not a very good idea. So the hive minds for older formats, when it comes to legacy, vintage, stuff like that, it's kind of a whole different ballgame because these people are a very different kind of committed. Now, kind of to what Steven was saying, talking about some of these like really, really high level pros, like, you know, your Brad Nelsons or your Matt Nass. Like, these are incredible players, and they have absolutely put up results in the format. If you look at historically what they've played, it's linear decks, usually combo. And a lot of that is because it minimizes the amount of the format that you really have to understand and all the weird corner case stuff that you have to learn. Because you know what your deck does. You know what stops it. That's all that matters. So, like, Brad Nelson, for example, had a pretty big rep for playing Sneak and Show. There's a lot of footage of Nelson playing Sneak and Show on the SCG circuit, including some pretty funny ones where he literally slams a sneak attack into play and sees another 13 or 14 cards and can't find a creature. It was hysterical. For example, now Matt Nass, for example, Matt Nass helped work on a deck known as Ice Station Zebra. There's one for the Memory Banks kids. Ice Station Zebra. So Zebra is a hybrid Tin Fins Reanimator and Dark Depths combo deck. The notion being that if you somehow try to shut off my draw a billion cards with the Grizzlebrand, do the thing, kill you, I just have like Thespian Stage, Vampire Hexmage, and the card Dark Depths, and we're gonna win that way instead. And again, Zebra's a little more complicated because you have so many moving pieces between the two strategies, but enough of them work well enough together. So like, again, you're talking a deck that's just like, I want to execute this very finite plan. When you come to, again, a lot of these fair decks, whether it be a control deck like Bant or Miracles, or a mid-range deck like, for example, Death and Taxes or Maverick, like these decks are very different and they require you to make a lot of very, very tight plays and a lot of very fine decisions. And you don't see a lot of pros gravitating to these when they play formats they're not experienced in, like Legacy. Now, I think that's kind of the core of this, where I'm suggesting that when you are looking for advice in lieu of experience, seek advice from those who have experience.
Yeah, like I said, it sounds like, to me at least, you're talking about, I'm willing to listen to a very, very wide range of people to see what they've hatched out over some grinders, because you just don't trust their opinion enough. But you will, however, listen to those top end players, the ones that know those decks so well, the exceptional pros that are like the top of the top within their own game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, I think a big part of that is, again, when seeking advice in lieu of experience.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about how you guys queued up to that blue-green deck
Yeah.
on Arena. You already knew the deck.
Yeah, I already did.
It wasn't super difficult for you to just audible to NASA's deck list because you already knew the deck.
Yeah, his list was actually 4 cards different from mine, and it's just meta choices.
Nice. And again, this was a very different kind of situation.
Yeah.
When I'm saying to somebody, you're going into an event, you don't know the format super well at the moment, and you don't know the deck you're playing super well, look to people that do.
Yeah.
So that I guess that's kind of, I think, where the core of this argument comes in.
Yeah.
Is in lieu of experience.
Right. I could see that. For me, I do totally see where you're both coming from. I do tap into those hive mind. I'm subscribed to a lot of different subreddits when it comes to Reddit. I'm in a few different Facebook groups on the decks I'm interested in. I will say I kind of do what Larry does, where I kind of ignore those groups 95% of the time, because it's either stuff that I'm already aware of because they're decks that I play a lot of, or it's not like it's already conclusions I've come to, like with a new card coming out, and like I'm gonna test it out myself and I'll see from there. If it's a new card, that new aura card, for example, I would have tested that if I really wanted to, but I just didn't want to because I knew it was going to be bad for even with my limited play in it. But yeah, I think we all agree that when it comes to those exceptional pros that are at the top of the game, we listen to them because they are the best for a reason. So, and I think it's to end. Steven, did you have any other comments or?
Yeah. So I was kind of perusing some deck database stuff, and I'm just looking at a top 8 here from a Legacy Grand Prix in Columbus in 2010. I think, Adam, you were talking about how a lot of times guys like Brad Nelson would play like Sneak and Show or whatever in Legacy. Brad Nelson. So let's just kind of go through this top 8 here, because there were some people that you mentioned in your argument that are also in this top 8. But we've got a good amount of pros here too. So Tomohiro Saito, um, definitely recognize his name. I'm fairly certain that's a pro. Is that correct, Larry? Saito's a pro, right?
I believe
Saito
so, but I'm not
was
100%.
Saito was a very, very well-known pro, and if I remember correctly, he's the one that ended up getting banned for an issue with cheating.
Oh, that's awkward. Okay, well then potentially he's not the best example, but anyway,
It might be not be him though. It might be another Japanese pro
yeah,
though.
I thought that was someone else who got banned. Is that
Yeah.
the guy who got banned? You're talking about Tronland guy, right?
That
No.
definitely ain't Tronland
No,
guy.
no, it was Saito. Saito got he got a suspension in 2001 for that was a bribery thing and a potential bribery thing. No, yeah, it is a different pro that I was thinking of, and it was the Tron land person that was
Okay. So all right, then Saito should still be a
Mhm.
pretty good example here. Saito was playing some Merfolk, um, and again, this is 2010, so you know, Adam, I don't know how much you know about the metagame from 2010. I know literal nothing about that, so I have no idea if, how much testing, for example, Merfolk would require, um, how deep the lines are in Merfolk. No clue. But it's a Force of Will deck, Force of Will Days deck, so I assume you definitely kind of need to know what's going on. How about Tom Martell? Tom Martell, is that a pro as well? I recognize the name.
Martell used to be pretty big on the legacy
Yeah.
scene.
Okay. Yeah. So Martell here. We've got top aided with um, looks like some sort of counterbalance deck. Counterbalance. Yeah, it looks like just the normal like Sensei's Divine, but it looks like he's got fire spouts in the main deck.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
Yeah.
so, like,
For Martel, that was actually one of his first big wins, and then he would go on to do very, very well in Grand Prix and Pro Tours for the next 6 years.
okay. Next competitor in top 8 here was Jason Ford. Jason Ford. Do we know? I don't recognize that name.
Not one I know of off the top of my head.
Okay. Okay. Then we've got Brad Nelson. Thought
Mhm.
this one was kind of interesting because this honestly just looks like an absolute classic Brad Nelson deck. It's literally just Abzan mid range, playing Dark Confidant, Knight of the Reliquary, Tarmogoyf, 2 Geth's Verdict, 4 Hymn to Turox, the Mox Diamonds, a single copy of Pernicious Deed, 3 Divining Tops, 4 Swords to Plowshares, 4 Thoughtseize, 4 Vindicate. But I mean, this is just when I think Brad Nelson, this is the kind of stuff he played in standard all the time. It's just like these grindy, mid-rangey, value black decks. So that's what Brad Nelson top 8 of this one with. Then we've got Corey Age. Does anyone know Corey Age?
No
It's not
idea.
one I recognize.
Not one I recognize.
Okay. Christopher Gosselin is the next one. I don't. I also don't recognize that name. Adam, do you recognize that one?
I don't.
Okay. Then we've got Bryant Cook. Now you mentioned Bryant Cook a few times, didn't you, Adam?
Yeah, the man literally invented the Epic Storm.
Okay, and it looks like that's what he's playing here actually. The Audnaught, Brainstorm, Burning Wish. Okay.
Yep, Rite of Flames.
Yep. Okay. So this is definitely deck spec. Now, is this pretty much what Bryant always played?
Yeah, he literally invented the deck, like actually factually.
That's pretty sweet. Okay.
He has a website dedicated to it as well.
That's so sweet, man. All right, and then we got Caleb Durward. Yeah, he's very close to a pro. Might not quite be there, but I mean I definitely recognize the name. Very popular grinder, strong player. And he top aided with what looks like what is a Vengevine deck here? Some sort of Vengevine deck. I don't know, what do you call this, Adam? I don't even know what you call this thing. There's like we've got wastelands, we've got tropical islands, fetches, noble hierarchs, basking root, walla, aquamoeba.
Is this a survival deck?
Yes, it is. Yep,
Oh,
survival.
Oh,
Well-
the good old days when they let people play survival, and eventually the metagame consolidated to: are you playing combo survival, aggro survival, or control survival?
That's fun. Is survival still legal?
Oh God, no, that got banned years
Okay.
Hold on, we'll talk about survival when we get to our ban list revisited next week.
Okay.
Yeah. And honestly, if you didn't consider Derwin a pro, I think the only reason he wouldn't be, I mean, I would consider him a pro, but the only reason he wouldn't be is that he shifted to just streaming because it was more profitable to be streaming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I would, yeah, we'll consider Caleb a pro. But I just find it interesting that, even, I mean, obviously this is just one event. This is not, the biggest thing, but just kind of, I just typed in because I was curious. I just typed in Google LSV GP top 8, and this is just the first, like, one of the first things that came up. And LSV is not in this, but I mean, we literally got like 5 pro players um, in top 8 of this event. And then we have, one of the more now. Is Bryant Cook considered a pro or not really?
Oh yeah, he actually grinds the pro circuit.
Oh,
He's
okay. So,
he also played a ton of Gift Storm and Modern for a while.
okay. So he's a crossover then. So he's pro and deck specialist.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. But I'm saying, we've got almost like 6 pros then in this top 8, and I think that really just kind of, I mean, if I'm going to take advice from somebody about what I want to do, deck specialists are great. The hive mind could be helpful, but I'm going to want to default to a pro. I mean, we've got 75% of this top 8 being pros, and I feel like we would find obviously not all of them are going to have 75% pros, but I feel like there would definitely be a pattern of a majority pros top 8ing even in these legacy events.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's pretty much I just wanted to kind of to go through that here. And this is just again the first one that came up. I didn't know that 6 pros top 8ed this when I pulled this up. I just pulled it up and just ended up being 6 pros. And I'm again assuming we would see a similar pattern. Probably some would have less, some might even have more. Who knows? And really, there weren't that many legacy Grand Prix. It was definitely a less common occurrence than other Grand Prix for other formats. But I think this is kind of indicative of just how important and how good professional Magic players are at playing Magic, regardless of what the format is. Like I'm gonna trust Brad, to give me good advice on decks and Magic, regardless if the format is Legacy, Standard, Modern, Cube Draft, whatever. Brad Nelson knows how to play this game, and even though he might not, jam as much Legacy as other players, he is so good at the game that his ability compensates maybe slightly less testing than, say, some member of the hive mind who's just only jamming their deck over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I think this sounds like, for Larry and Steven here, you guys take that consideration of those pros very, very highly. After that, you will also talk to the near pros and those heavy grinders that put up result. And you kind of disregard the hive mind altogether, where Adam, you are also looking at those top end pros, but then you skip that mid area and you go right to the hive mind because you'd rather take that wider net approach. Because if enough players are playing, you're leaning on the insane amount of games that, as a collective, they're putting in.
I mean, yeah, that sounds about right.
Sure. Yeah. I do lean a little bit towards where Larry and Steven are at, only because when I don't have that time to become that format specialist or a deck specialist, then I'll do that. But like I said, I do tune in to those Reddits and those Facebook groups often to see what's going on. Even if I do disregard it, I want to see where they're at with things.
Mm-hmm.
So then next up, we have that legacy taxes versus reanimator, and then also talking about in particular for taxes, that 60 versus 80 pile that's popular right now. But I believe we're going to take a quick break before we pick that up.
Yep.
Sounds good.
All right, so we'll be back here at about 7:40. Is that good with you, Larry?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, just give me one moment so I can go ahead and put a nice little screen on for everyone so they're not sitting here in silence.
Yeah.
So let me. What time are we coming back?
Let's do 7:42 or so. That gives about 4 minutes. And yeah, Zach had a lot of good input on the different players. Oh, one final thing. It was Saito I was thinking of. He was the one that got a suspension for it was because it was at a tournament I think that I was at, the GPDC,
Okay.
where it was an issue with him um abusing time and in order to get some stuff going on. So it was like abuse there.
Mm.
But he
Okay.
is obviously a very, very well accomplished pro. The guy's been on the Grand Prix and Pro Tour scene since '03 and continued to put up results through 2018.
Okay.
Sick,
Mhm.
sick. But yeah, guys. Well, we'll actually just take a break until 7:45, and we'll be back to finish off this episode of Talking Swish.
Very good.
Welcome back. We are here. We had to go on a small break, but we are back, and it was all Dewey's fault. But we won't point fingers.
You just did.
No, I didn't point a single finger. Not one. Not one.
Look, I'm willing to take the blame for it. I needed a refill. I've got my, go-to bourbon on,
He
on deck now.
he buys it from
And
Dollar Tree. Don't let him fool you.
if you could buy bourbon from Dollar Tree,
I wouldn't want
look,
it.
I would be willing to buy it to give it to you as a gift, Larry. I just want you
I
to
don't
know
like
that.
your expensive bourbon, let alone cheap bourbon.
I mean, my glass of wine earlier came from Aldi's, so I don't know what the fuck y'all are talking about.
You know what? When it comes to wine, I think once you pass like the bottom barrel stuff, I don't know. I just don't have the palate for it. I enjoy
All
a really good bottle of wine,
all
but
wine tastes the same.
Yikes.
that
That
that's a bold statement.
makes me sick.
I'm not a big
Larry,
wine
you give me
drinker.
ice cold takes.
I'm a beer guy. I don't wine's whatever. Like
All of the above.
all of the above.
The answer.
I just like beer. I could live on burr.
I can live on beer as well, but like, I don't know. There's a certain essence that comes to like liquor that you don't get from beer. Like, you can have like these very interesting beers that they're making now, but like, it's not gonna quite get there for like a cocktail. There's just so much you can do with a cocktail that you'll never be able to do with a craft beer.
Oh my goodness.
And
Surprised.
I know, I mean, I know I can get there. I know that they're in quite a bit now, but like a cocktail being made fresh, there's components of that you can't capture.
I mean, I don't know, man. Like, the whole notion with hoppy IPAs is all about the aromatic components, right? Which is what you're talking about?
No, no, no. Like, if I'm gonna have a sour, and it has to have an egg yolk, egg white in there to give it a certain level of foaminess. You can't get that if you package it up. When you make a package, I don't know, they're making like those Moscow Mule beers now. It's
Yeah.
nowhere near the quality of a real Moscow Mule. I want a Moscow Mule. It doesn't have that crispness that you get from the lime juice, the bite you get from the ginger beer, and then the extreme cold you get from that glass, from the ice, all being mixed together, balanced out with that liquor.
I mean, you might be surprised, my dude. Like,
I mean, I've had them, so I'm not surprised because I've had them.
talking about textural components, my dude, like, smoothie beers and smoothie seltzers exist now, right? Like, we're talking egg yolks and cocktails. Like,
Yeah.
you can get some texture to a beer now.
No, I guess I agree with you. They're doing very, very interesting stuff with beers. I just don't think it captures a cocktail. There's a uniqueness when it comes to a cocktail.
See, I guess I'm the wrong guy here, though. Anyway, I'm Mr. Neat Pours, so
I mean,
By the way,
I'm only doing a neat pour right now.
put it out there. Sours suck. That's why I'm gonna put that out there.
I mean, I feel like sours and wheats, in general, there's so much there that you could have just had bad wheats and you could have had bad sours. I actually went through a couple bad sours before I found some that I liked, so I can see
Maybe
that.
I need to revisit them eventually. I had them at a couple different breweries when I went on magic trips because on paper it seems like something I would enjoy. It's like everything that I enjoy is equals up to sours, but every time I have them, I'm always disappointed. So,
I guarantee you there are sours you will love, and once you have the bug's gonna bite you.
like I
I
said,
can take you on a journey one of these days.
yeah, I'm always down to try it because I do need to check out more breweries here in Grand Rapids. I haven't had a chance to do it because moved here and then COVID. Um, I've only been to the one.
Free.
I've only been to New Holland. It's literally the only one.
Good. Like, we can do better.
We can do better. I'm down. I heard Founders is cool.
Ooh, yikes! No.
No, is Founders?
I didn't say this on a public podcast, but yeah, there's a lot of little like small batch craft places locally. They're doing some really really killer work.
I'll definitely have to check them out.
If you're in GR and you're gonna go to Founders, because everybody goes to Founders, because that's like a huge big deal. People want to go there, but there's a lot of amazing small spots that people miss out on as a result.
Yeah, I mean that's why it's called Beer City.
I was just about to say we are called Beer City for crying out loud. So
one of my personal favorites actually is New Holland Brewing. For those that haven't been to Grand Rapids before, we've got insanely good food, which is great for me. I don't really drink that much, but then Julia loves them obviously because they have great drinks as well. But their food is way better than Founders in my opinion.
Yeah, I got it. Jolly Pumpkin's very good. Shout out to Arvon Brewing Company. Trail Point in Allendale is very good. Lost Art on Remembrance is solid.
I enjoy Elk Brewing a ton. It was one of my favorite spots every Sunday after disc golfing. And then Mitten Brewing is always a blast for me because I can go there and get a flight of beer and a flight of pizza.
It's so good.
Yeah. Seven Monks obviously is wonderful.
This flight of pizza you speak of.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Beer flight, pizza flight, let's go. Team outing.
This sounds like a heavenly place. Flight of pizza and I'm in.
Oh, dude, it's a lot of pizza too.
I'm in. You already sold me. You don't have to sell it no more.
Dude,
you
when
won.
Kids tire themselves out and fall asleep in the corners. You and I can walk across a long road and get a real drink.
I will say this. I actually think Founders Food's trash.
No, here's the hot
take. Medium. It's fine, but I wouldn't say it's trash. I'm not that aggressive, but I agree it's not as good. It's not as good as like literally any other brewery I've been to.
Here's the reason why I think it's trash. You're right. I don't think it's bad food, but the problem I have with it is everybody thinks it's the greatest thing ever. That's the reason why I judge it so harshly.
Oh, that's fair. Okay.
Because people put on such a high pedestal, I go in there with a really high expectation because everybody hypes it up. And every time I go there, I'm like, meh. I enjoyed the beer more than I enjoyed the food.
See, here's the hottest take for you. I work in the beer industry in Grand Rapids, and I have never actually spent any amount of time in Founders.
It's interesting.
Yep. I have gone to the building exactly once, went into their general store, purchased a beer you could only buy directly from them, and then promptly left.
Wow. I think, even though we have quite the list of breweries in Grand Rapids, I think I've been to about 50 or 60% of them at this point.
I've got to be like...
I bet you're way higher, probably in the 80%, if not 90.
Maybe, like, I'm missing a couple, but not very many.
There's a couple of them that I just never got a chance to go to because of the pandemic. Like, it was on my list. Or it was just a smaller spot, and I had other ones that people wanted to go to. When you're going in a group, it's difficult because if you're excited about trying this niche brewery, everyone's like, well, I want to go here because all my friends want to go there. I was like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, the small spots are where it's at.
Agreed. So we should get back into this debate, though.
Yes, it's D&T time.
So
it's time.
Yeah, Andrew, I know that Adam knows his beer, and we do listen to his recommendations.
I listen to nobody's recommendations. I just want some natty light vodka. That's all I want now.
Well, That's just wrong. We just have to add in Andrew's input here. If you're in the chat, Andrew thinks the Knickerbocker does have good sours from the Jolly Pumpkin. He thinks Brewing Company is great. Peace is good. He thinks Founders is also trash. Oh, that's just Larry saying I'm always wrong.
No, that was somebody else, the part of Swish that said that. That had nothing to do with me.
Sure. You want that pop off? Are you kidding me? You're a monster. I'm done with you. All right. Yeah, KBS has significantly fallen off. But we're going to move on to the debate for Death and Taxes here versus Reanimator, which really, everything that we have here tonight is based around this. It came from this conversation because we were at the tournament.
It did indeed.
So what we're going to be talking about here, we're going to be having the main topic, which is the Taxus versus the Reanimator. But then we have a subcategory to this, which is whether or not you think the 60 versus 80 card version of Taxus changes the matchup against Reanimator.
Yep.
Now, we did have Adam start off originally, then Larry, so we're going to go back to Adam here to start things off. Because there's this subcategory to it, it's still the 5 minutes, but if you do wish to have a little bit extra, like a minute or so like that, just let me know. We'll extend it as well. But if not, and you feel like you can capture that all in the 5 minutes, that'll be fine, because you'll have that time for rebuttal as well later on.
Yep.
Sure.
Sounds good.
All right. So lead us off.
Okay. So I guess the topic in question relates specifically with certain to a particular list because there were a lot of very specific data points. So we can, I guess, do you have access to that list, Larry? You can drop in chat.
Yeah. Don't actually pause this time for right now so I can find the list so we can be able to do this correctly.
While you're pulling up the list, Founders did get bought by a very large company in the sale.
I did.
You guys want to hear a really funny story, real quick?
What's that?
My grandfather actually had a chance to buy stock in Founders and turned it, or actually buy a share, not stock, sorry. Like literally be a partial owner of Founders, and he turned it down.
It's hard. You never know. I mean, you hear about these stories where people pass up on these opportunities, but then there's also plenty of opportunities where we're like, I would have thrown away.
He ended up doing fine for himself. He spent his life living on Reed's Lake, so it worked out okay. But he would have had a significantly larger amount of money had he gone in on Founders Brewing.
I believe that is the lake that my old mentor lives on too. So
very cool.
It's a good lake to be on.
Oh yeah, dude, it's a wonderful area.
All right, I do got that list loaded up, by the way.
Here it is.
Can you drop the link as well, and then I'll drop it in the chat?
The what?
The link.
Can you
link?
You want the actual link? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna put it in Twitch chat so
that people can see it
and look at it.
Okay.
There it is. Perfect.
All right. This is the one that you're referencing, right? The Legacy Challenge.
Yes, this is the exact list that I played by Yogbot that I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
All right. Yeah.
All right, so good to restart?
Yep, good to go.
Cool, okay. So I'm on the side of this argument where I, through experience and, again, just the notion mathematically, Reanimator is a good matchup for us. Now, there was a conversation that led into, well, if they win the die roll and they just turn 1 you, it's like, okay, like, that's going to happen some percentage of the time, right? But in our main 80 card pile, we have 12 answers to our opponent putting a turn 1 Grizzlebrand into play. Now, there's a whole other line of conversation about, well, what if they don't go for the Grizzlebrand? And what if they... So, start off with, the way that you die in this matchup, the vast majority of the time, they reanimate a Grizzlebrand, rip 14 cards, and reanimate something else.
Right. That makes sense.
It's usually the second or the third idiot that is what's really problematic. Because the first one, it's easy enough to beat. You point the Swords of Plowshares at it, you point a Solitude at it, you go to your turn, play a Caracas, put it back in their hand, and stare at them while they now have to try again. So there are a whole series of ways that we can interact with this. But when the Grizzlebrand also turns into a Chancellor or a Sire or an Iona or whatever the flavor of the day might be, that becomes problematic. Now, in recent developments, obviously all the reanimators are playing Grief now. I don't consider Grief to be that problematic a permanent for us to answer once it's in play, because its stat block just isn't big enough to be that terrifying. I'm talking about any of their large, obnoxious, huge mana cost idiots that they only could ever put into play via reanimation, or a series of nut draws involving multiple dark rituals. So in that situation, you end up with, you have to beat the Grizzlebrand. If your opponent gets the small outer where they're like, okay, Grizzlebrand, rip 14, do the thing again. Like, in game one, we probably weren't doing a whole lot against that, sure. But they make the Grizzlebrand. They get ready to set up, right? They draw a 14, they're like, we're going to manual this card, we're going to do the thing from there. Cool. We have 12 answers in game one to this Grizzlebrand, including 4 Swords to Plowshares, 4 Solitude, 4 copies of Caracas, all of which undoes this. We're not taking any damage from this Grizzlebrand. So, pulling up the fancy hypergeometric calculator here, we have an 80-card deck, we're drawing a 7-card hand. There are 12 cards that we want to hit, and we only need to hit one of them. Our chance to draw one or more of these is 69.5%. Functionally 70% to hit one of these cards. So we can answer that pretty easy. Now, in the sideboard, we get a whole series of other things that we can bring in to make this even better for us, including Deafening Silence, Containment Priest, Rest in Peace, Mindbreak Trap. So it makes it even harder for them to execute their game plan. And then on top of that all, we're on the play. It means their Chancellor trigger becomes less, if they have a Chancellor, their Chancellor is less relevant, because we have the 1 mana to pay for our Mindbreak Trap. If they don't have the Chancellor, we resolve Deafening Silence, and there's literally 0 chance that they can reanimate something on turn 1. This matchup is fundamentally good, because once we get past that initial barrage, we start resolving Thalias and Rest in Pieces and Sanctum Prelates and, even something like a Spiritual Labyrinth, shutting off Grizzlebrand from drawing extra cards. Like we said, it's not the Grizzlebrand that kills us, it's the thing that comes next. So if Grizzlebrand shows up and says, I'm a big dumb demon with lifelink, and we're like, that's cute, here's a 3/1, your Grizzlebrand doesn't do anything other than attack and gain you life. Eventually we beat that through a series of Mom or Giver and Flicker Wisp, through Solitude, through Swords to Plowshares, through Caracas. We can find another answer to this. We can find a way out. We just need to get through that first 1 to 2 turns. And that's why we have our Mindbreak Traps and our Deafening Silences. The matchup is quite good to start with, and goes to very good post-board. Now, mind you, this list is also not playing something I think is a big tool in the matchup in Surgical Extraction. And I know Larry has something to say on that. But Surgical Extraction is another no mana investment answer to stop their game plan that normally sees play in the deck. In regards to the 60-card versus 80-card configuration, again, the hive-minded Death and Taxes players seem to have settled on 80 cards being the preferable. There are a few of us old-timers that still prefer the 60 cards. You're slightly more consistent. You do lose out on some tools, but you generally tend to make up for that consistency, and it just requires you to play a little tighter and make a little more precise decisions. So in that situation, obviously we're losing some number of Solitude. In my mind, we can argue that the full 4, so that puts us down to 8 main deck answers to a turn 1 Grizzlebrand in game 1. So that puts our odds of drawing 1 or more to 65.4%. So we're about 4% less likely to draw one of them but still over 50%. Slightly interestingly, we gain a percent to draw exactly 1, just by the nature of our smaller deck size. This being a big reason I like the 60 card list, because you are a little tighter. You're not worried about drawing cards that potentially don't matter. Looking at you, Skyclave Apparition, because that card is not good in the Reanimator matchup. Not even a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we start slimming down on some of this extra bulk. We're probably not playing this main deck Palace Jailer. If we're playing a 60 card version, we're not playing this Charming Prince that we certainly don't want to see. We're not drawing this Giver of Runes, so we're more likely to find our Swords to Plowshares or what have you. We're playing less lands, so the time when we need our lands to be Caracas, it isn't instead Urza Saga. Again, this is a matter of personal preference. I like the 60 card version because I have played so many reps in the deck. That said, I think that it is very reasonable for anyone to choose the 80 card version because you do have access to more tools. Again, your odds only dip about 4% in playing 60 card versus 80 card, and that's just by the nature of literally losing 20 cards from your deck. 4 of those which are perceivably answers to your Grizzlebrand.
And over to Larry.
All right. Just to start, I know it's like the tail end question, but I firstly think 60 cards is the better of the two decks. One, I think the 80 card deck was designed as a crutch. I feel like players want to be able to answer everything and not trying to tool their deck to answer specific things, so they decided to play that Yorion would be the best route to do that because they can play as many cards as they want to. Well, you could play as many, I should say. But 80 cards gives you a lot of more room to be able to do a little catch-all. Example, they're playing like Urza Sagas, things like that, and they're able to play the 4 Skyclave Apparitions, the 4 Spirit of the Labyrinth, just to name a few. And at the same time, that 80 card also weakens your game plan. So now it makes Aether Vial so much worse. I played the 80 card version, and there were so many times that a Vial on 1 would have been sweet. When I say so many times, I mean every time. It's hands down the best card in the deck. And not being able to consistently have that on turn 1 is a big feel bad. The 60 card is more cleaner when it comes to post-board matches as well. If you look at the sideboard, there is a ton of 1-ofs on that sideboard that I would love to be able to bring in because I want to be able to cast that 1-of. It's a little bit harder when you're playing 80 cards and you're not really playing a lot of card draw. So you're trying to naturally draw this 1-of Council's Judgment. You're trying to draw this 1-of Peacekeeper to not die to your opponent's wave of aggressive creatures. And that's just very hard to do when you're trying to play an 80 card deck. Where in 60, obviously it's still not a guarantee you're going to draw those 1-ofs, but you have a higher percentage that you're going to be able to pull that off. Now let's talk about the Reanimator Death and Taxes matchup. Game 1 I do not think is favorable. Reason being, you're in the blind. If this was open deck list, I think it would be favorable for Death and Taxes. 100%. Because you have an idea what hands you need to keep compared to what hands you don't need to keep. In Game 1, you're not guaranteed that you're going to keep a Solitude or a Swords of Plowshare or even a Caracas. There might be hands, I had hands in that tournament where my opener didn't have any of the 3. That's going to happen. And if you're in the blind and you don't have one of those 3 against the Reanimator, you're probably going to lose that matchup. Against a good Reanimator player, that is. Now, if you do end up having the Solitude hand, for example, that's a hell of a card. You're probably going to win that Game 1 because you have a good answer to what they're going to do early. Obviously, they can still win through it if they get the chance to draw or whatnot. And let's say you draw swords instead of the thing, and then instead of the Solitude, you're probably still going to lose that matchup, but at least you have a better chance if you do have those cards in your hand. So, let's say we lose Game 1. That's the discussion here. Game 1 is slightly disfavored. I don't think it's a large margin either, by the way. I don't want to make it think like it's unwinnable Game 1, but it's very hard, I think, Game 1, unless you do get a little luck in your favor with your opening hand in the blind. Game 2, you're on the play now. Here's what I'll use the example of what happened to me, and then we'll go on and talk about the scenario that I had. I do have one slight correction. the deck list because there was like miscommunication and the borrowing of cards that I only had 2 deafening silences. So I ended up playing an additional of that 3-drop in the sideboard, Sanctum Prelate. So that card didn't, just to put that out there, I want to make sure that's known. I forgot it up until now. So my sideboard plan was, as you were mentioning, I was bringing in the deafening silences. I'm pulling up to my sideboard guide really quick. I brought in the 2 traps, the silences, the Council's Judgment, the Canis, the Peacemaker, the Priest, the Revoker, and 2 Rest in Peace. And then the cards that came out was 4 Mom, 4 Apparition, 1 Jitte, 1 Battle Skull, and 2 Stoneforge Mystics. Yep. Oh, and then I think the additional 3-drop came in because I didn't have the deafening silence. I forget what the last card that came in, but that was the base core of it. That was the game plan. I did not have my Bring Trap in hand. I did mulligan my first hand because I didn't have one of those many high percentage cards because my opener did have Rest in Peace, but Rest in Peace was not going to cut it. Rest in Peace is pretty bad against what Reanimator's doing on their first turn. And I knew I wasn't going to have the time to really rip them. And I was thankful I did. Go over that in a minute as well. So I ended up mulling down. I ended up finding a hand that had swords. It had swords and had some creatures. And I believe it had Containment Priest in hand as a 2-drop. So, fine hand. It had Swords of Plowshare. It had Containment Priest. It's probably best hand. You know, I may get some of the configuration a little messed up. I'm not 100% if it's... I know it's a 2-drop hate piece. It might have been another Rest in Peace. It's been a few weeks now. So, that was my hand. They go, I lead off, play my land. I'm going to sit there. It was a Caracas. I remember that much. It was a Caracas. So I played my Caracas past turn because I felt pretty good. I'm going to beat a Grizzlebrand. Grizzlebrand ain't going to really do much for me against me. We're going to go. He does the Chancellor draw. He does all his things. He ends up putting a Sire in play. And he also griefed it for Evoke. And I no longer had swords in hand. I no longer could play a 2-drop because my first spell cost 1 more. And I quickly died. Now let's talk about why I think I died. The more and more, I will say I have changed my opinion a little bit since we first had that discussion, Adam, in the Discord. I don't think it's as unwinnable as I originally thought. I will say that. Obviously, your opinions on things are in the heat of the moment because it just happened.
Yeah, you were frustrated.
Yep.
For sure.
So I will say that my initial comments did have an impact because of the heat of the moment. But as reflection and after doing, because I knew we were going to be having this discussion, so I wanted to make sure we could have a fair discussion. So I wanted to look into it a little bit more and not let my full emotions be leading the charge. I 100% think that Taxes might be a closer matchup than I originally thought. I do think 60 cards actually might have a favorable matchup against Reanimator. I think you have a better chance of drawing those cards. The big blunder, which I did say before, is I think this deck not playing Surgical Extraction in the sideboard is a punt. And I 100% think this deck should. And if I was playing a 60-card build, I 100% would because I wouldn't have been constrained on playing that 15 sideboard card, which is pretty much a dud. And also, I think the matchup gets a little bit better in the 60 card. Just because your percentage of drawing all these hate cards, because you're going to be bringing in all some additional one-ofs and additional 2-ofs like this in addition to the cards that are in your main board. Yeah, you're probably going to lose the Solitudes. Let's say Solitudes don't make the cut. I was telling people I'd probably play it as a one-of. But let's say for this conversation, he's no longer in at least the main board. So you do only have the 8 pieces, but I think 8 out of the 60, I think that percentage is high enough as you went and ran the numbers in your statement. But you're also going to have the sideboard, take out the Pithing Needle. Pithing Needle might not be there. I guess it could be still because it's still Pithing Needle at the end of the day. But let's say we're using this. We'll just say we're using this whole configuration. Actually, instead of Pithing Needle, let's say that we have Surgical Extraction. Okay? So we have a Surgical Extraction. Let's say we're playing the 3 Deafening Silence. But we actually had the full list and we didn't have any mistakes. the chances of drawing all these one-ofs and all these, like, because we're going to have that one of Surgical, all the one of Deafening Silence, which would have been really good against them. Obviously, Chancellor would have stopped it, but say if somehow they don't have Chancellor and they're not good and they don't keep a Chancellor hand, Deafening Silence would be very good against them. But final statement, I think drawing your one-ofs is going to be better in your 60-card form, and it's going to make your matchup a little bit better. I'll let Steven go on because I don't want to be going over too much time.
I appreciate that.
Great. So Adam obviously talked a little bit about hypergeometric calculator when he was talking about a 12 of, essentially in an 80 card deck. And Adam, did you compare that to a 12 of in a 60 card deck?
We compared it to an 8 of because we're assuming that we cut all four.
Sure. So one thing that I think is like very critical is Aether Vial, at least in the modern version of Death and Taxes. I'm not the most well versed in Legacy D&T, but I assume it's like pretty similar. And I've played a little bit of Legacy D&T, but just not nearly the amount of reps I have with modern D&T. So Aether Vial is everything in Death and Taxes. That card completely changes just the functionality of the deck as a whole. When you play an Aether Vial in turn 1 in Death and Taxes, the power of your deck basically increases like tenfold. It really feels like you're playing a different deck. The games that you're playing Vial on 1 and the games that you're not playing a Vial on 1. The games where you play a Vial on 1, you get to do a lot of sweet things, a lot of interactive things. Very powerful, very, very skill-intensive game, things like that. And obviously, there's still plenty of skill involved when you don't have Vial. But just the amount of decisions you get to make and the amount of things you get to do increase just astronomically when you have a Vial versus when you don't have a Vial. It's basically when you have a Vial, you're able to instant speed all these sweet creatures. And when you don't have a Vial, you're basically just playing a bunch of draft chaff at sorcery speed and just kind of hoping these creatures are good enough. That being said, Aether Vial obviously is a 4 of. It's incredibly important for Death and Taxes. It's a linchpin of the deck. It's just absolutely critical, and you really need to have it. The power level of the deck is so much higher. So in a 60 card version, population size of 60 cards, number of successes being 4 of them, that would be drawing an Aether Vial. We got a sample size of 7 because that's our opening hand. And then the number of successes in the sample would be 1. We want to draw at least 1 Aether Vial. The odds in a 60-card deck of drawing at least 1 Aether Vial, because we would accept hands that have 2. You obviously don't want 2, but you'll accept 2 because 1 is just so good that you don't care. The odds of having at least 1 Vial in your opener on 60 cards is 0.399. So essentially 40%. It's 39.9%. We'll just round up to 40 there. So effectively 40%. When you change the population size to 80 for a Yorion deck, let me run these numbers again. It's 0.3118, so 0.311, so basically 31%. So we go up 9%, which is basically, 9% is very, very close to 10%. And 10% would effectively be 1 out of every 10 of your games. You're seeing an Aether Vial more often with the 60-card version of Death and Taxes than without Death and Taxes. And obviously, this is just a 4 of. I'm not even looking at 1-ofs right now. Obviously, the percentages will differ there too. But so effectively, 1 of every 10 games, which when you think about it, basically, in Magic, a lot of close matches, a lot of your matches go 3 games. That's just how Magic works a lot. When you have high level competitive players playing against each other, oftentimes your matches go 3 games. Not a lot of 2-0s when players are on similar grounds. So when you think about it, if every match is lasting 3 games, and obviously everyone doesn't last 3 games, but basically once per 3 matches in one of your games, if you're playing a 60-card deck, you're going to see that turn 1 Aether Vial more often than you would with the 80-card version. I think that's a fairly relevant amount of the time. 10% is pretty big. And Aether Vial is just such a huge deal that, the 60-card version, and Adam, you said you even still prefer the 60-card version because you're an old-timer or whatever. But I think mathematically, when you look at it and just, how important Aether Vial is for that deck, or like say Rashidenport or Wasteland. Those are also like in Legacy. Those cards are very crucial, and obviously they're even better if you have a vial because you can abuse them much more. But like having a 9% differential on all these cards, Thalia would be the same thing. It's a 4 of. It's very important in a lot of matchups. There's a 9% difference there as well. Aether Violet's not the only card that matters when we're talking about this percentage change. It's just the most important card in the deck, in my opinion, in a lot of spots. This is like a really, that's a very, I would consider that statistically significant information, a statistically significant change, and definitely could swing how the deck functions and how good it is in certain matchups. So I do agree with Larry that the number of cards could certainly change that matchup. And obviously, Larry not only was he playing 80 cards, but he was also down one of those deafening silences in the matchup, which could have been really critical. Obviously, Adam, when you were talking about your specific scenario, it was like really focused on Grizzlebrand, and I don't have the experience in this matchup like you do, and even Larry has more experience in the matchup at the moment than I do because I have literally never played the matchup. On paper, even if you have like one of those answers to Grizzlebrand, it feels to me like it could still be like pretty scary because they're still going to get to draw like 7 cards, at least, right? Because if they reanimate it, they lose 7, and if they don't reanimate it, they don't have to lose life if they're able to like use Lotus Petal or whatever to animate that. They don't even have to lose life there, so they get to draw 14 before the Swords or Solitude happens. So it feels to me like even if we have like one of these 12 answers, we could still like definitely lose games in these spots, and this isn't even considering Grief. So on paper, I'm still a little hesitant to say that I would think D&T is favored. But I will also say that D&T, a lot of people don't realize how good D&T, like if the pile of D&T is really good, D&T's matchups might seem bad on paper, but a lot of times you can kind of accommodate for those things. So I think it's pretty interesting. I still think that D&T would be slightly unfavored versus Reanimator in game 1, just from what I think looking at the matchup. But I'm not 100%. Obviously, I don't have the most experience, but that's just kind of what I think looking at the matchup. And pretty soon here, I'm going to start testing Legacy, and I'll probably figure out, and maybe I'll change my opinion because I'm going to test some Death and Taxes. Yeah, right now I'm still going to side with that D&T is slightly disfavored in game 1. Even at 60 cards, I'm not 100% that it would be favored, just because. And to be fair, I have some biased opinions towards Reanimator because every story I hear about Reanimator, and maybe it's just because Reanimator you don't hear about unless it's doing the really bust stuff. But I played a team event with Brandon Dalloway, where he just got absolutely nut drawn by Reanimator in game 3. I mean, Dalloway had surgical plus force and lost the game on turn 1 through a surgical and a force. And then in Larry's case, he got turn 1 twice, like when he had like the answer to the Grizzlebrand. So I think I definitely currently have a biased, like an unrealistic view of the Reanimator deck, just because the people I know that have played against Reanimator have just gotten absolutely nut drawn by this deck, and it definitely doesn't do that every time. But I'm still going to say that I think that D&T is slightly disfavored. I'm not going to say very disfavored. I would say slightly disfavored game 1, and maybe 50-50 post board. I really don't know. I don't know enough about the matchup to make a great claim on that. So I'm kind of just going off what you guys say. But with my just kind of looking at the list, I would think it is slightly disfavored, very, very slightly.
Okay. Now we're gonna get an opportunity for both people to give their rebuttal. So Adam.
So I guess a thing that needs clarified real quick here is while I do prefer the 60 card version, I've played a pretty high number of reps on 80 card. I did want to test the deck once it kind of started to gain traction, and again once it became kind of the de facto configuration So pretty familiar with the 80 card configuration. I haven't played the exact 85 or the 80 95 cards. That's a lot of Magic cards.
95 cards, yes.
I I haven't played the exact 95 that or whatever it might be that Larry played, and that just comes down to exactly the card Urza Saga. So I've not played a Saga build yet. Something I'll probably test at some point, but I haven't at this point. So in regards to like Reanimator and nut drawing people, yeah, like there's a lot of horror stories. You hear a lot of like pretty abysmal stories where the Reanimator players like, yeah, turn one, reveal Chancellor, unmask you, dark ritual, yeah, basic swamp, dark ritual, entomb, exhume, nice deck, draw 14 cards, then reanimate Iona, name white. So glad you came. Sure, like there's a pretty like unreasonable ceiling, but there's also like the times when your reanimator opponent's just like turn one, play my Badlands, play Faithless Looting, discard 2 more lands because my hand just doesn't do anything. Like the failure to that deck is like reasonable enough. In regards to Larry, you were talking about like some of the sideboarding and stuff. Like missing the third Deafening Silence, definitely a thing. I will say that like now hearing your sideboard plan, I think you were a little heavy. And I think some of the cuts that you did make don't necessarily make a ton of sense, but I also don't fault you for that. So for example, you mentioned cutting Mother Runes. I think I keep that card. It's not spectacular, but it's also not awful. Especially because you have so many hate bears that you just want to protect. Number one, first and foremost, being Containment Priest, because sweet lord, Reanimator cannot win with that card in play, just not at all. So like, I think one of the first things I would cut in the matchup is Skyclave Apparition, just because Skyclave Apparition is never going to exile anything meaningful. Like you might hit a Lotus Petal. If your opponent is running the Eric Land and Special and has a Magus of the Moon in their sideboard that they decided to bring in against you, the mono white deck for some reason, sure, you could exile this Magus of the Moon that did almost nothing anyway. But like Apparition just is never going to do a ton. Alternatively, like Prelate's only medium. Like you can name one and shut off their Dark Rituals and the Entomb and the Faithless Lootings. But, like they've got other means. The Charming Prince is a pretty slow turtley card that's really only there like to grind. Which is kind of the whole nature of the Yorion pile in and of itself. Larry, you had mentioned the whole notion of like the Yorion pile was a crutch. People wanted answers to everything. Not even just so much that, but like when mid-range blue suit becomes the flavor of the day, like it has been for a while in Legacy, people bulk up. They want more impactful cards. And Yorion was just a reason to jam more impactful cards in your deck. So all of a sudden, whereas you might only be playing 3 Skyclave Apparition in a 60-card list, now you get the 4th one. And you get the Palace Jailer. And you get some Solitudes. And you just get more cards that are good and have text. The problem with that notion is that in some matchups, those cards just aren't good. Like, the last thing I ever want to do is draw Spirit of the Labyrinth and a Mirror. Especially, like, 4 of them. Yikes. So, like, that kind of comes down to the whole thing with the Yorion pile, is that it was meant... Yorion Taxes was meant to kind of prey on these, like, mid-range or control decks that are just kind of playing a bunch of good stuff, just a bunch of value piles. Does that mean you don't have tools for combo? Absolutely not. Like, you have so many tools for combo. Again, like, Fear the Labyrinth, the ever-present Thalia, who never goes anywhere, Sanctum Prelate. And then to kind of touch on the whole topic of a bunch of one-ofs, if you look at a solid portion of your one-ofs, they're all creatures. Specifically, they're all creatures you can find off of the 4 copies of Recruiter of the Guard. That's by design. So these are silver bullets that when they're good, you bring them in, and if you absolutely have to, you can recruiter for one, get it, put it into play, and then it's there and it's relevant. Now, is that plan slow? Absolutely. It sure is. But it gives you more functional copies, right? So like I talked about earlier with the whole thing with the Reanimator matchup is pushing back the initial barrage, right? That turn one, unmask you, just pitch this, cast Dark Ritual, cast Entomb, cast Exhume, ha ha ha. Like when you stop that, and all of a sudden they're like turn one is like land, go, your end step, Entomb, untap, Exhume. Like you have way more interaction points. You're drawing more cards. Like you slow them down so that they now have to respect every little thing you can do. Steven, you did mention Vile, so I'll talk about that for a minute. Yes, Vile is like one of the best cards in the deck. Like shout out to Flickerwisp. That I remember picking up the deck for the first time years ago and going, why is this Flickerwisp here? Why isn't it like any of these other things?
Right.
And then I started learning about all the things you do with Flickerwisp, and I was like, wow, this card's busted. Just absurd. And like you don't even have to Vile it in. It just doesn't matter. Like the value of Flickerwisp increases as your knowledge and understanding of the deck and the format increases. So like when you start going, okay, so I have this Flickerwisp in play, I'm going to attack you for 3, second main phase, play another Flickerwisp, target my own Flickerwisp, end step, my Flickerwisp comes back. Now I'm going to target one of your lands.
The
You need a land for a turn cycle.
The classic Wisp chain, dude. Wisp chaining. It's just excellent.
Oh, absolutely. So like you have all this stuff, right? So like the notion of the thing, and I kind of mentioned this in the original conversation with Larry, is that if you can stave off the initial barrage, if you don't die on turn 1 or turn 0 or whatever, like you have so many interaction points. When I was pulling up those hypergeometric numbers, that was just to relate to things we can do within the first turn of the game.
Yeah.
Just that cycle. Because once it comes back around and we have another land in play, that opens up even more.
Yes.
And then it opens up even more beyond that, right? Then we start talking about, okay, so then we have Recruiter to go find the Containment Priest or the Canonist or the whatever it might be. And this leaves us just a whole series of things. So, again, I guess to kind of summarize everything real quick here, I played a lot of the 80 card version too. I think the 80 card version still has tons of game. I think that you do need to really think about the cards that are in your deck and what you can do versus your opponent. And I think that sideboarding has to be very tight. Unfortunately, Larry, I think you were given a kind of questionable sideboard guide. But I think that the deck has plenty of answers. And again, when you're looking at 12 outs in game 1, and in the math that I did, I think I was boarding in 3 Deafening Silence, Containment Priest, 2 Mindbreak Trap, 2 Rest in Peace. So we're getting 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 more cards on top of the initial swath of 12. So that's 20 hits that we have to stop our opponent. Now, again, are all of those turn 1 hits? No. We're going to get 3 Deafening Silence we can play on turn 1, 2 Mindbreak Traps. But, like, that's going to be good enough a good portion of the time, right? And, like, the odds of drawing one of a 20 out in this turns into 87.8%. And the odds of drawing, like, more than one is pretty reasonable. So, yeah, the odds to draw exactly one, only one of our 20 out, is 31%. So we're 31% to draw one of our 20 things that interacts with Reanimator. If we go to one or more, we're at 87.8%. So I think the match was pretty solid.
Now, I think the crux of this debate, because I think you guys both agree that once you get past the first few turns, it's a good matchup. You were able to fight that off. You guys are both there. Larry, you disagree heavily on the first turn, right? Like turn 0 and turn 1, you disagree heavily on that point, right? If I remember correctly from the Reddit thread, the thread that we had, not Reddit.
Yeah, definitely Reddit.
Yeah.
No jokes aside. my firm opinion of Death and Taxes is I think the deck, if you're playing against any deck that's going turn 3 and beyond, I think Death and Taxes favor. I think it's favored against Bant. I think it's favored against Delver. I think it's favored against the Jeskai Raga Van or whatever. Saga Van, I think is the name they
Right.
were giving it. I think it's good against all those. Matchups I found very difficult was the Doomsdays, the Reanimators, the 8-Wall decks, the turn 1 decks. Because a lot of your Cyber cards don't do anything turn 1. And that whole the discussion that Adam was saying about it was by design that Recruiter grabs a lot of these cards. That's on turn 3. Like, that's not going to work. If I'm to that point where that's going to work, I'm probably in a fine spot anyway. I'm going to be comfortable at that point of the game. The point where I'm uncomfortable is on turn 0, turn 1. The games where I die without getting to do anything. Like, this deck doesn't have Force Will. It's going to be disadvantaged there. And that's the nature of it. You're going to be weaker against those turn 1 decks than a Force Will deck is going to be. And then... there was one other thing I wanted to cover. The Cyborg guide. I disagree that I was given a weak Cyborg guide. I got the guide from somebody that plays a lot of taxes. And he did well in this one. I think he got like 13th or something like that. I forget the exact placing he got. So he obviously did well with this deck list. Because we were playing the same exact list, except he played one very rogue card in the list, which I wouldn't have played. But to everyone's own.
That's it.
What's that?
I just saw the list.
Yeah, He showed me the card. I honestly
That's
didn't know what the card did when I first saw it, but that was his thing. I'm happy for him. Trying to see if I can find the list.
I can drop it. I can drop it in.
I got the Legacy Pit pulled up now.
It's on. The whole thing is on Goldfish. I've been looking real quick. I just dropped the link in the chat.
Okay, cool.
Dewey, I'll let you post it.
Yeah, but
I
yeah.
think Larry's been hosting it actually, but I can snag it right now.
Yeah, you can snag it. I wasn't next one.
The card in question for everybody in chat who can't wait for the spoilers is a single copy of Mangara of Corindor.
Yes.
Oh yeah, baby. Classic.
Yeah, that is a callback to the old ways.
Yes.
And there's a chain with that, right? If I was being informed properly.
Mangara of Corindor plus Caracas plus Aiden Violent 3 means you just get to keep exiling one of your opponent's permanents every turn.
Yep. Pretty good.
I gotta ask the dumb question with this. Is the chance of that happening worth it?
It used to be really common. When Legacy was a much slower format, Mangara was a staple. It was an all-star.
Okay.
Once the format sped up with the kind of Gitaxian Probe, Deathray Shaman era, all of that stuff, Mangara kind of fell off because it just wasn't something that was viable when the format was so fat. When everything had evolved to beat this kind of Gitaxian Probe, Deathrite Shaman, like very hyper-aggressive format. But now that Legacy's slowing down and everyone's looking at like Rose and things like that, like Mangara doesn't actually seem that unreasonable.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Steven, I have an idea.
Oh, that's good, Nick. That's good. I enjoy Death and Taxes ideas.
I think to put the linchpin on the conversation, I believe we're moving it over to Steven to give any additional thoughts he would have between the two rebuttals.
Okay. One thing. So yeah, I agree that Mother of Runes actually might be good for a few reasons too. When you were talking about the Mother of Runes staying in the deck, it's also when Larry was talking about some of the annoying things Reanimator does. Obviously, it's Chancellor of the Annex is the white one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when the Reanimator player is Chancellor of the Annex, it's really important, especially if you keep, if they don't have the totally nuts draw, like we've talked about a few times. If they don't have the totally stupid, like kill you on turn 1 draw, which obviously yet, but according to you, Adam, that's like few and far between, which I believe. I mean, the deck would put up a lot more results if it did that consistently. But anyway, when they don't do the dumb thing, and when you keep like, a Thalia hand, a hand where you want to get a Thalia, or a Rest in Peace hand, or maybe you have this surgical extraction, what have you. when you have a really critical 2-drop, Containment Priest, you really want the 1-drop to be able to just cast into the Chancellor to just let it get countered, so then you can the door is open for your 2-drop. Correct? That's a really important thing, and we didn't really mention that.
Yep, I would agree with that notion.
Yeah. So that was one thing I wanted to mention. And then trying to think if there was anything else you were talking about that I really wanted to comment on. That was specifically the main thing. But yeah, I mean, I agreed with a lot of the points here. Obviously, Aether Vial is incredible. Flicker Wisp is incredible, but it's specifically incredible with Aether Vial. It's obviously a very good card without Aether Vial, but it's very clear that when they printed Flicker Wisp, they did not think about how it would interact with Aether Vial, because Flicker Wisp with Aether Vial is some of the weirdest. You just get some of the weirdest stuff happening that really doesn't even feel like should happen in a game of Magic. Flicker Wisp just does some absolutely crazy stuff when you're using it with an Aether Vial, like cheating out people's lands for a whole like turn cycle is like absolutely wild. Like that's not, no other card does that in Magic. Like it's literally like the only card that does it.
Yeah, it's like when they designed that card, they forgot that there's other ways to cheat it into play.
Yeah,
and they only designed the card around casting it normally.
Right. And you know, I mean it's like it's a good card when you cast it normally. It's fine. But when you're abusing it with like Aether Vial and like ways to blink it on the end step and things like that, I mean, it just gets, the card is just absurdly powerful when you can do those things. And the great thing about the card is people who haven't played Death and Taxes, or people who aren't used to playing Death and Taxes, really don't see, they can't even really fathom the amount of possibilities that the things you can do with Flicker Wisp. Like they just don't even have a clue, because you can just do so many things. Like it's just so many options with that card, because you can interact with really any permanent at any time, and just kind of make it disappear for a turn cycle or whatever. So it's just, yeah, Flicker Wisp is insane. Zach Allen can attest to how much I love Flicker Wisp. He was trying to tell me to put Flicker Wisp in the Elementals deck. I still haven't gotten that. But yeah. Anyway, really good points made here. I'm definitely glad that now that the event is over and now that we're having this conversation, Larry was more in on that it was a closer matchup than he initially said it was. Because I definitely agree that the matchup is by no means unwinnable. And, you know, I have no idea how good or bad it is, because I've never played it myself. But really good points made on both sides. And yeah, so I'm gonna pass it back to whoever else. Who does it need to go to now? Larry?
Yeah, I'll just take it over. You know, this is the easiest moderation ever because there's not like aggressive points back and forth, and I appreciate that a ton with these kind of debates because we're really just presenting the facts that comes with it.
Yeah, I tried, man. I watched the presidential debates from back in like November, whenever it
And so you
was.
just did the exact opposite.
I tried to get inspiration. I looked at the fly. I was like, "Fly, tell me what to do while you're on top of that head right now."
Oh my gosh. All right. I do appreciate moderating this. I'm more than happy to continue moderating next ones, but I'm going to pass it back to Adam here for a final word for 30 seconds, then Larry, and then we'll wrap up the entire conversation. So, Adam?
Yeah, just had a quick comment about something Steven mentioned there at the end, and that was about like the dumb thing not being as common as it was, as common as it seems. And it's part of the notion, right, that there was a player who used to be the single-handed trophy leader on Magic Online as it pertained to Legacy Leagues. His name is Eric Landon. So Eric Landon played a ton of Black Red Rain in there, almost exclusively. And it's not like it was Landon's favorite deck or anything, but the notion was that Landon thought that it was the best way to grind EV, because whether or not you had won or lost was determined very, very quickly. Because what happens is, if you just do the thing on turn one, it happens, your Grizzlebrand draws 14 cards and you do more garbage, like, the game's probably over. And even if your opponent doesn't concede and doesn't admit that it's over, like, you're going to kill him in, like, 3 or 4 turns.
Mm-hmm.
If you try to go off and hemorrhage all your cards on turn 1, and they're just like, surgical extraction, force of will, whatever. You're just dead. Like, it doesn't, like, your opponent might take 37 turns to kill you, but, like, it's going to take you so long to rebuild and do anything meaningful that the odds of you stitching together anything that matters before they can just, like, disrupt you again and then continue on with their game plan is very low. So Eric Landon became the trophy leader in Legacy, playing Black-Red, knowing that the fail rate was, like, pretty reasonable, but just knowing that, like, the amount of time spent is so low, it didn't matter.
Fair enough. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I've applied that concept to other times when I was on a heavy grind too. Like when I wanted to just make a bunch of money and Tron wasn't the best thing, it didn't matter. I was just jamming through things so fast, and my matches were getting over so quickly. Like the upside of winning didn't really matter against those other decks that did target me. So I could see that. Larry, pass it to you for the final word on the debate, and then let you wrap up the podcast and stream.
Yep, final thing I say. I do want to go back to when we were originally talking about like hive mind thing. The one thing I know the talk was like for the 80 cards because that's what everyone's doing, and that goes similar to what Raja was talking about, where everyone was playing the 3 Shark Typhoons. I think everybody's playing Yorion because it's what the hive mind is telling them to do, and I personally think the 60 card version is the correct build. I did see somebody did 5-0. I don't take 5-0s very highly when I think if decks are good or not. But I'm going to take in, like, tail off of that 5-0 list. And I'm going to go ahead and try to see if we can make a 60 card build. Me and Steven already talked about it. We're going to be working on some 60s.
We'll hop on a stream together. Let's do this.
Also, I just want to put this out here for Adam, though. Grabbing Cauldron off Stoneforge is not always 100% correct on your first grab. I'm here for you, buddy. I beat Jonathan Blank because if I grabbed Cauldron, I would have died to Bant. I actually don't think that's a very good plan against Bant. But we could talk about that another time.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah, I'll give you the reasons why and how it ended up winning me the game by not grabbing Cauldron. But like I said, we spent enough time talking and debating back and forth. I don't want to take up any more of the viewers' times and listeners that's going to be hearing this on Friday when we release it. But I do want to put a nice little bow on this episode. It was a fun episode. We all got to discuss various things when it came to Legacy, Death and Taxes, and when we're getting preparations for tournaments. We also talked with Adam, and everyone in this call at least, we spoke about doing a fun little session. We're going to work out the details and the dates and times and everything, and stay posted to Twitter to find out more information about it. But we're going to do like a 6-game series, I believe is what we called it, where it's going to be Death and Taxes going up against Reanimator. And we're going to just, obviously this isn't going to be all like, oh, this is going to make it fact. But it's going to be fun to have a little matches, we'll say. We talked about the matchups, now let's see it in action. And Adam's obviously going to be on the D&T side. And we're going to be over on the Reanimator side, and we're just going to play some Magic, and we're going to see, during this series, who's going to leave on top. And you know what, Adam? If you win, I'll even give you 2 paper solitudes. I got you.
I mean,
you know.
I seem to recall that I own 4 of that card already.
Oh, I'm going to give you 2. I am going to give you 2. You know, I'll even give you a Peacekeeper. I got a few more cards that I don't know offhand that I can give to you as a gift.
Oh, strange. This sounds like cards that I might have lent you for this event.
This might be true. You know what? I even will take it up one. This is my last offer. I might even give you a face mask with the Swish logo. You know, I am a giving person. They call me Santa Claus. You know, do you need a shirt? I don't actually know. Do you?
I think I'm okay. My world is full of shirts.
Okay. Did you need a shirt though? I need to look that up. Do you actually need one?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I did not order a shirt.
I was like, I don't even know who's that left on the list. But
gave you a whole list.
Yeah, I gave away some last night for a
Larry
raffle.
Can't read.
Reading's tough, dude.
Reading is hard. No, I only got a couple left I need to give away, but not actually give away, but you know what I mean.
Mhm.
Um, but no, this was fun, guys. We also are going to be having an announcement tomorrow regarding our Innistrad Midnight Hunt booster box giveaway. That's going to be putting out the date when the contest is going to end, and we're going to do a live Twitch stream when we do the drawing. That
Oh,
should be
nice.
exciting. And also, this past weekend, we mentioned it earlier, we had our first big what do you want to call it? We call it Swish on locations, where we're going to start going to various local game stores. We're actually going to be making a trip down to Indiana, going over to Happy Time Game Store. It's the store opened by John Whetstone, and we're going to do some coverage at his store. So that's going to be exciting. I'm working on some details with a couple other stores, but we will be at Galactic Toys and Games every Monday. I'm going to see about working some details, and maybe we can start locking in some Fridays over at their additional location.
Nice.
That should be fun.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we got that. And just so everyone knows, it's a very, I think it's, jeez, things are echoing over here. But we also had a pretty good moment where we have over 1,000 views on the video from Saturday. So if you haven't got a chance to see that yet, go take a look. It's
And if you have viewed it, thanks.
yeah, it's 7 rounds of modern action, including the full top 8, because they did not split. Very rare
He
occurrence.
wasn't splitting, dude. He wanted that money.
Yeah, he did. He was
All
like,
these idiots out here playing Shark Typhoon. He said, no more Shark Typhoon. I'm playing my list. I'm going to crush everybody.
yes.
Tune in to see if he won the event.
Yeah, for sure. It was pretty sweet. We talked about surgical in this conversation, how I think it should have been in the sideboard. You might see a surgical or two in this matchup. You never know. You never know. But yeah, I don't have anything. Again, Adam, thank you for coming on the show. It was a great time.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me, and thank you for everybody for hanging out tonight. We've had a pretty solid viewership all night, and we really appreciate you sitting here and watching us bicker.
Yeah, we bickered. And everyone, I also want to say, we follow us on Twitter and Facebook, because we might even play a little bit more tonight. We'll see right here live on stream. We still have some more draft action we need to finish off from last night in a sealed match. So we might go ahead and do that. And, who knows? Maybe Dewey will join us.
Unfortunately not. I need to go work on some stuff that's due tomorrow for work.
Oh, you should probably do that. What have you been doing all
I'm
day?
working on the other stuff that need me to do.
Unacceptable. No. But no, again, we appreciate it. This has been Larry, Steven, and Dewey. We will catch everyone later.
See you next time.